Hello, everybody, and welcome. My name is Laura Hammond. I would like to welcome you to the LCTL Career Fair today. I assume some people will be coming on as we're doing the welcome and the introductory remarks. So just come on in. You will be muted, and your video will be off. So my name again is Laura Hammond. I am the Director of the Language Program Office in the International Division. It is my distinct pleasure to welcome you on behalf of the Wisconsin Intensive Summer Language Institute and our major sponsor, the Institute for Regional and International Studies, to this inaugural UW-Madison Less Commonly Taught Languages Career Fair. As of this morning, we had approximately 450 registered attendees and 43 exhibitors to this fair. We appreciate that we are in unprecedented times, especially when thinking about international opportunities related to less commonly taught languages and working in far-flung regions of the world. We are also sincerely thankful that you've decided to give us your attention at the end of a very long week of online language classes. Before introductory remarks, I would like to give you a brief overview of how the day will move forward. We will follow the timeline of the agenda, which you can see on your screen right now, and you may feel free to leave and return as works best for your interest level and for your schedule. The entire event will be recorded and made available afterwards so that you can return to any of the sessions at your leisure. The website will also remain up throughout the year, and additional exhibitors will be added along the way. So please feel free and remember to go back to our website at future dates to look for updates. The structure of this fair is relatively straightforward. All attendees will be muted, and you will not have your videos activated throughout the event. You may ask questions by entering them into the WebEx Q&A window. Simply pose your question and then hit send. We will have a Q&A session just following the keynote address by Cheryl Gibbs from the Department of Education, who will be introduced more formally in a few minutes. We have a wide range of panelists during the afternoon with significant experience working in international arenas and working with international programming. Please take advantage of their expertise during the Q&A. In an attempt to shorten your screen time directly after each of the 3 informational panels, we will only take questions when there is available time remaining at the end of that scheduled session. In other words, we will stick with the scheduled timeline for all panels as shown on this agenda, which will give attendees more flexibility to come and go. Any additional questions for your panelists will be moved to the final Q&A session that will take place between 4:15 and 4:45 p.m. Central Time. Please do come back to the Q&A session if you have unanswered questions, and also to hear what other attendees are holding. I would like to express my profound thanks to those responsible for organizing this event. A very special thanks to Dr. Felicia Lux, who is the director of the Wisconsin Intensive Summer Language Institute, WISLI, and will be our MC for the day. I would also like to personally thank S.C. Lenkner, who is our LCTL Career Fair event coordinator, and Chandler Moss, the WISLI program assistant, for all their hard work in taking this fair from an idea to a reality. We are planning to enhance and offer this fair annually during future summer sessions, and happily invite you to join us again next summer. In addition, we have quite a few staff members from our various WISLI programs working hard in the background. They're gathering your questions and moderating this event. Those are the same people who bring you our exceptional summer language programming and are invaluable to WISLI. I shout out a thanks to all of those people for their service to WISLI and for the service to the fair. I would like to introduce our next speaker, Dean Guido Podesta. Dean Podesta has been a true friend to WISLI. As Vice Provost and Dean of the International Division, Dean Podesta provides leadership across the university for international education and engagement, and for strategic planning and coordination in this area. The Vice Provost and Dean promotes faculty collaboration and initiatives in international teaching, research, and outreach. In this capacity, Dean Podesta provides oversight for several international division units, including International Academic Program, the International Internship Program, the International Safety and Security Office, the Institute for Regional and International Studies, and the International Projects Office. Now, with no further ado, Dean Podesta.
On behalf of the entire UW-Madison community, it is my pleasure to welcome you to the LCTL Career Fair. I'm glad to see so many are in attendance. Additionally, I'm grateful to the sponsors and exhibitors who are supporting the event, as well as to faculty and staff for their efforts to bring this fair to fruition. I'm pleased that Cheryl Gibbs, Senior Director of International and Foreign Language Education in the U.S. Department of Education, is joining us today as well. One of the first times I had the chance to hear Cheryl speak was several years ago, when I was Director of the Latin American, Caribbean, and Iberian Studies Program. It is wonderful to be able to host Cheryl again, albeit virtually. We will look forward to an in-person visit sometime in the future. Our goal in the international division is to cultivate the next generation of global citizens. We accomplish this through language programs such as WISLI, international internships and study abroad programs, global partnerships and projects, and nationally respected area study centers. Additionally, UW-Madison conducts research and help from around the world, and campus is a destination for international students, with more than 6,500 from over 100 countries enrolling at UW-Madison last year. I hope that beyond your time in WISLI, you will find more ways to engage the world. Please know that more opportunities are available to develop your own global perspectives, which can be beneficial no matter what field you plan to pursue. The need for those who can work across languages, cultures, societies has ever been more important. When speaking with colleagues and partners on the state and federal levels, I increasingly hear the urgent need indeed, for more scholars and professionals who can navigate the international stage. Cooperation across global studies, economic, health, political, environmental, and others require individuals who can create bridges. As individuals who are immersing yourself in the study of cultures and language, you will be well positioned to lead the way. I hope that those in attendance will find this to be a valuable opportunity to make connections that will give insights on career options and directions in which you can take your language learning. Thank you again for being here today. I'm certain that there will be some fascinating conversations, many of which I hope will continue even beyond this career fair. Without further ado, I would like to invite my colleague Leslie Bartlett, a faculty director of the International for Regional and International Studies, to speak next. Thank you.
Thank you, Guido. So my name is Leslie, and I'm speaking today on behalf of all the good people in the Institute for Regional and International Studies, or IRIS. I put a link to IRIS in the chat stream if you want to check us out. IRIS is the umbrella organization that comprises and supports the University of Wisconsin-Madison's 8 area studies centers, 6 of which are currently national research centers. And these centers are all intimately connected with the promotion of language study. We want to offer a special welcome today to the participants of WISLI, which coordinates across the 5 intensive language institutes that have been working for more than 4 decades to support language study in the United States. Traditionally, each summer, over 200 undergraduates, graduate students, professionals, and other non-traditional students from across the country study a less commonly taught language at WISLI. And these courses are intensive. They condense an entire year of language study in an 8-week summer session. This year, when COVID required WISLI to move fully online, the enrollment expanded 50%. And currently, there are about 375 students who are studying a dizzying array of languages that includes Arabic, Persian, Pashto, Urdu, Hindi, Portuguese, Burmese, Hmong, Indonesian, Thai, Turkish, Vietnamese, Kazakh, and Uyghur, among others. In addition to having intensive language study, the courses have put on a fascinating set of cultural and topical events, such as yoga in Arabic, a presentation on high-stakes testing and medium of instruction in India, a talk on the resurgence of authoritarianism in Cambodia, and a conversation on Central Asian literature, among others. As participants in these summer institutes are keenly aware, there are 4 primary reasons to study a language. They are cognitive, political, economic, and social. First is the cognitive benefits of knowing 2 or more languages for people of all ages, as evidenced now in a large body of research findings of clinical and cognitive psychologists in different parts of the world. People who speak more than 1 language have improved memory, problem solving and critical thinking skills, enhanced concentration, and ability to multitask and better listening skills. The study of a foreign language also improves your English language vocabulary skills and your metalinguistic awareness. Second, language is key to international relations. There are significant national security needs, especially in intelligence and international diplomatic communities, for language qualified analysts and other professionals. It's worth reminding ourselves that an estimated 80% of the world does not speak English. And as the president of the Council on Foreign Relations, Richard Haas, stated, language is a gateway to global communities. The ability to read local media and communicate directly with diverse populations greatly enhances global engagement. Third, speaking a second or a third language is an economic asset. There's a huge need for multilingual workers in the private sector, and foreign languages can provide a competitive edge in career choices. In fact, between 2010 and 2015, the number of U.S. job postings specifically geared toward bilingual candidates more than doubled, and employers are increasingly seeking professionals who can use their language skills and communicate with customers in new and expanding markets overseas, but also internal to the United States. Bilingualism serves as a significant advantage in public sector jobs as well. For example, in 2016-17 school year, there were 44 states plus the District of Columbia who said that they had a language teacher shortage. 39 states now offer the seal of biliteracy, and to earn that, students need to demonstrate competence in 2 languages, often through a set of language and/or bilingual courses that need instructors. The 4th reason to study a language relates to social integration and social equity. Foreign language study creates more positive attitudes, reduces prejudice toward people who are different, encourages respect for others, and fosters humility, as we all know. Knowing another language communicates facilitation with the more than 60 million U.S. residents who speak a language other than English at home. It fosters chances to connect with a wider range of people in our personal and professional lives. And multilingualism is essential in the U.S. today for the fair and just functioning of our society, including delivery of healthcare and social services, education, and the judicial system. Speaking another language also helps us gain perspective, a somewhat critical perspective sometimes, on our own culture and language. So it's clear why learning a language is important, but why choose a less commonly taught language? Well, most language study in the United States focuses on a small set of European languages. According to one study, only 9% of students choose a less commonly taught language. And although they're less commonly taught, some of these languages represent huge communities of speakers. Think, for example, of Yoruba with 20 million speakers, Swahili with 100 million, Portuguese with 220 million speakers, Arabic with 422 million, or Mandarin with 1.3 billion speakers. And even if they are smaller speech communities, many of the less commonly taught languages are critically important to international relations in the 21st century. However, the low level of current enrollments in less commonly taught languages jeopardizes the relatively few existing programs and can restrict access to language learning opportunities for the majority of students in the U.S. Thinking about this prompts me to reflect on my own engagement with a less commonly taught language. In college at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, I studied French. And when I received my lowest grade ever in French 3, I became convinced that I was simply not good at learning languages. As an undergraduate, I never had a chance to travel or study abroad and to use the language. However, as an education major, I started reading in translation the work of Brazilian educational theorist Paulo Freire. And Freire had some pretty revolutionary ideas about schooling. For example, he insisted that schooling education is never neutral. It is inherently political in the sense of who is educated, how, and whose experiences are represented in the curriculum. After teaching high school for a few years, I went to graduate school in the field of sociocultural anthropology, in part because I desperately wanted to learn more about life outside the United States. I enrolled in Portuguese language classes with the goal of going to Brazil and seeing Freire's ideas implemented in person. And it is not an exaggeration to say that learning Portuguese changed my life. I had the opportunity to meet amazing people, two of whom are godparents to my children. I saw Freire's ideas in action, including the surprising complications and limitations of some of those ideas. The research I did with youth and adult literacy programs gave me new ideas about the possibilities and limitations of schooling as a form of social action. And the work set me on the career path I enjoy today, working in comparative and international education, often with Brazilian colleagues. Thus, I know personally the multiple and recurring benefits of studying a less commonly taught language. And the same is true of our honored speaker today. In college, Ms. Gibbs studied French and Latin. She began her career as a high school English teacher in her hometown of Sharon, Pennsylvania. When she relocated to Washington, D.C. in 1984, she began her federal career in the Office of Post-Secondary Education. She's worked for several decades in the Office of International and Foreign Language Education, where she now serves as the Senior Director. She oversees the policies and a $76 million budget for area studies, international studies, and modern foreign language training programs authorized under Title VI of the Higher Education Act and the Mutual and Cultural Exchange Act. These programs strengthen the capacity at U.S. institutions of higher education to meet national needs for global competitiveness. Staff in the Area Studies and Language programs at University of Wisconsin-Madison have had the pleasure of working with Ms. Gibbs for many years. One person described her as, quote, a steady, positive, guiding force for area studies and language studies across the United States, end quote. And another person said Ms. Gibbs is, quote, the rock of the NRC and FLAS programs, a person who has had impact beyond measure, end quote. Ms. Gibbs is intimately familiar with the incredible potential of language study for people's growth and development. And we are very lucky indeed that she agreed to be with us today as our keynote speaker. And with that, I turn it over to you, Ms. Gibbs.
Across the United States, and to all of the students who are studying less commonly taught languages. It is indeed my pleasure to spend a few minutes with you today to talk about the mission of the department and our role in this endeavor. I must admit that when I was first asked to do this, I was quite intimidated to be a keynote speaker, but then I thought, all you're doing is giving some notes on key issues about what the department's role is in this endeavor. So with that, I will begin. Okay. I might need some help advancing these slides. Leslie, how do I do this?
We'll do that for you.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Before I talk about what your place is in the world of less commonly taught languages and area studies, I want to talk about the department's place in this endeavor. Very often when we represent the department, we don't give you a sense of the scope of the Department of Education. There are 4,000 employees at the U.S. Department of Education, and we are at the headquarters building in Washington, D.C., and we are in regional offices across the country. And I'm giving these numbers to make a point. There are 4,000 employees overall. There are 200 employees in the Office of Post-Secondary Education. About 165 or so, no, about 150 of those persons work in other areas in higher education. You might be familiar with the TRIO programs or Gear Up and those kinds of programs. The bulk of employees work in the Office of Student Financial Aid, where the huge budget, the Department of Education administers probably well over $100 or so billion in monies for grant programs and student financial aid. And then you have IFL, the International and Foreign Language Education Office. Out of 4,000 employees in the department, out of over 100 or so persons in the Office of Post-Secondary Ed, you have 15 dedicated persons who are administering 10 international and foreign language education programs. So our FTE is obviously very small, but our fierce tenacity for foreign language education is very strong. And we pride ourselves as being the only unit in the U.S. Department of Education that has a direct place in the Department of Education's mission statement. And the mission statement is to promote student achievement and preparation for global competitiveness by fostering educational excellence and ensuring equal access. Now, the mission statement is designed to capture the various missions of the department, like the National Centers for Educational Statistics. That speaks to excellence and measuring excellence. Some of the higher education programs that speak Gear Up and TRIO, equal access, and equal access in the K-12 programs. But the global competitiveness is where the International and Foreign Language Education Office has the singular and unique mission in the United States. And then by the programs that we offer, training you students who are attending WISLI this summer and who are matriculating at the National Resource Centers, we're preparing you for global competitiveness, and we take very great pride in that endeavor. Next slide. So where is your place? Think about it. Where do you think your place is in the world of least commonly taught languages and area studies? Leslie, in her comments, mentioned that less commonly and least commonly taught languages are a gateway. But before you even began to think about a foreign language, let alone a least commonly taught foreign language, you had your own beginning with language that represented your gateway. Next slide. So in the beginning, your very first utterances were your personal, least commonly taught languages. I'm sure your parents, grandparents, persons close to you, regale you of stories of your first vocabulary and how you got their attention through certain words that were only your language. But those words allowed you to communicate and to interact with others in your immediate environment, your parents, your siblings, grandparents, babysitter. And there was a purpose in that. Your unique utterances, okay, next slide, it's fine, allowed you to make connections. It allowed you to change circumstances. It allowed you to expand your boundaries. It allowed you to be inspired to reach out and explore new challenges. And it allowed you to call attention to certain needs, whether you were hungry, whether you needed to be changed, whether you wanted a toy, whether you wanted whatever the need was, your utterances, your language allowed you to do that. So fast forwarding, next slide, please. Whether our personal history or the history of the United States or world history, there are triggering events and challenges that provide individuals and societies with the context for pursuing language and language proficiency and the capacity to engage with others, to affect change. That's what language is. In the beginning, when you were uttering, as you moved through school and you were attracted to learning a language, the whole overarching outcome was to affect change and to allow you to engage with others. Next slide. So there's a history to what we do, our beginning. In 1957, the Soviet Union launched Sputnik. That was the department's or the government's triggering event. They began to think, well, we cannot afford to have another country outdo the United States in STEM education or space exploration. So they decided that it was a time to authorize programs that would prepare U.S. citizens, U.S. teachers, U.S. students on what it means to have some competency or understanding about other parts of the world. So in response to the challenge of Sputnik, they authorized the National Defense Education Act in 1958. Eventually, the programs that the National Defense Education Act authorized, eventually they were included in the Title VI of the Higher Education Act. So in 1965, Title VI, which are the international education programs, became part of the Higher Education Act. And then in 1961, we had the Mutual and Cultural Exchange Act, also known as the Fulbright-Hays Act. And as far as the Department of Education is concerned, those programs include the Fulbright-Hays Doctoral Dissertation Research Abroad, which focuses on research in the social sciences and the humanities. The other Fulbright-Hays programs that are not on the slide, but have relevance to what you do or what you plan to do, the Fulbright-Hays Group Projects Abroad, which allows for research overseas for short-term periods, and also for institutions to propose intensive language institutes and experiences overseas. But back to Title VI, which is the focus of this event today, because many of you are attending WISLI on Foreign Language and Area Studies Fellowships. Back to Title VI, the main purpose of all of the programs under that title, including the National Resource Centers, the Foreign Language and Area Studies Fellowships Program, the Centers for International Business Education, the Language Resource Centers, the American Overseas Research Centers, and International Research and Studies, and the Undergraduate International Studies and Foreign Language Program. Collectively, all of the Title VI programs are designed to strengthen U.S. capacity to understand and respond to issues of global significance. Dating all the way back to Sputnik, that was an event of global significance. And ever since then, we have been training students. We have been providing institutions with the resources to be able to do that. Another thing that these programs do, we prepare students to meet the challenges of an ever-evolving geopolitical and economic landscape, locally and worldwide. These programs produce students with advanced proficiency in the less commonly taught languages, and with the breadth and depth area and international studies expertise. Next slide. The programs prepare students for meaningful employment, and my colleagues in the panels that are coming up will focus on that. The programs strengthen national security and diplomacy, and they challenge students to pursue paths of inquiry beyond your immediate environment, the programs that you are participating in, not only this summer during your WISLI experience, but back on your campus during the regular academic year, the classes that you take, the seminars that you attend, the outreach events that your institutions provide for you. These are all opportunities for you to pursue paths of inquiry beyond your immediate environment. And it also allows you to appreciate diverse perspectives and a wide range of views among your peers as you study these different disciplines. There are diverse perspectives in religious studies courses, in geography, in political science. So it's very important that your language training and your area studies and your international studies allow you to do that, to really get an appreciation for diverse perspectives. The Foreign Language and Area Studies Fellowships Program has had a rich history of awarding fellowships, and I just gave you a snapshot of the number of fellowships that have been awarded over the past 5 years. But before we look at the actual numbers, it was very interesting to me when I looked into our research reporting system. We were able to collect data about the number of fellowships dating back to 1959. So those of you who are engaging in these least commonly taught language programs, you're part of a rich history and legacy. Looking in our data, in 1959, there were 328 FLAS fellowships. In 1960, 964. And then in 1969, and these numbers obviously are driven by the budget that the Department of Education received, or NDEA, the funds there. There was a huge spike in 1969 for 2,984 fellowships. 1970, a little over 3,000 fellowships. In 1980, 857, obviously a big decline. Our data do not indicate why there was a decline. It could have been a budget issue. And then we move into the decades of 2000, where 2000, 2001, there were about 2,000 fellowships. And then jumping ahead to the slide today, in 2015, you can see there 2,000 fellowships, and then 2016, about 2,000. In 2017, a little over 2,000 fellowships. 2018, again, 1,906. And in 2019, 1,122. Now, those are what we gather from the institutions, what they awarded, but that says a lot about how they leveraged the monies that we gave, because according to the slates for the same time period, the Department of Education awarded about 1,400 FLAS fellowships across the FLAS granting programs. So in each case, the institutions were able to leverage their FLAS monies and their allocations to award far more fellowships than what we provided the resources. And that is another benefit of this program that speaks to the commitment of the institutions like Wisconsin and the area studies centers there and across the country to reach as many students as possible who merit these fellowships, who are committed to language learning on more than one language. And so what we provide is a drop in the bucket, and then the institutions leverage those to make these numbers of fellowships. Next slide. So in talking about and thinking about foreign language and area studies fellowships and the intensive language learning that it provides, current and future workplaces involve working across cultures that require language skills, regional knowledge, and the ability to see things from different perspectives. And so the FLAS fellowship allows you to do that. And in our most recent foreign language and area studies fellowship flash tracking survey, we surveyed 2,384 respondents, and I'm sure many of them include you who are listening to this event today. And of those respondents, 76% said that their foreign language and area studies training directly impacted their marketability and promotion potential. So 72% said it helped their promotion potential, and 76% said that it directly impacted their marketability. And pulling some data from that flash tracking report, students end up in these sectors: U.S. Department of State, Department of Defense, United States Agency for International Development, the Institute for Peace Studies, Teach for America, Google, Brookings Institute, Microsoft, Honda, J.P. Morgan, Chase. So the language training takes you to public and private and government sectors that really need individuals who speak the language and who, by learning those languages, have a maturity and an understanding of what it means to operate in a global environment. Next slide. This slide was inserted from a survey of our Fulbright Hayes doctoral dissertation research abroad students. Although it is dated, that snapshot was for this time period because the program officer for the program wanted to make sure that students had completed their dissertation research projects. And based on the survey, and we just did this survey last year for this cohort, it shows that 99% of DDRA fellows completed their doctoral projects. 80%, and this is kind of small, completed their degrees within 4 years of their doctoral dissertation research project. Research fellows used 81 languages in 60 countries under their Fulbright Hayes DDRA fellowship, and 93% were employed in fields related to their DDRA fellowship experience. Next slide. So where is your place in the world? Well, again, my colleagues are going to speak to this about government locations and professional development, but the training that IFL offers through our international education programs, through our LCTL instructional programs, it allows you to go to various places in the world, U.S. Department of State opportunities, U.S. Department of Defense, and other agencies like the Peace Corps, National Security Agency. Next slide. And again, where is your place in the world, and how will you impact it, and how will you fulfill that place? It depends on using your language to promote change, using your language to adapt to change, using your language to be the change. And that is our hope through the programs that the U.S. Department of Education, International and Foreign Language Education, hopes is happening through these programs. And during my time as a program officer before moving into senior leadership, every time I read a flash report or read a report from the area studies centers, it was quite evident, profoundly so, that the monies that we are investing into the programs are allowing our students to do just that, to promote change, to adapt to change, and to be the change in a world that desperately needs students that understand language, that connect to other people and cultures, that allow them to really do a deep dive into their disciplinary and interdisciplinary pursuits. Our students are in programs of law, they are in history, they are in anthropology, women's studies, global and international studies, communications, studies of the environment. And these past events over these past several months makes us really focus on the need for students who understand public policy, health issues. The world is just wide open and ready for students like you who are pursuing least commonly taught languages, who are pursuing new gateways, who are building bridges, and who have the talent, the gifts, the passion to make a difference so our nation can be globally competitive. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cheryl, for your inspiring keynote and for helping us think about our place in the world. So we have some questions. We have about 15 minutes for Q&A with our keynote speaker. As we're going through our questions, if you have some additional questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A panel, and the moderators will share them with us. So Cheryl, one of the first questions we have is, what advice do you have for language learners as they prepare to go on the job market?
My advice is to, beyond the academic setting for your language learning, reach out into service areas, service-oriented experiences, because those will help you to apply your language skills, and not only apply the language skills, but it hones your ability to connect with other people and to identify where the real hot button issues are and how you can impact those issues. Because that's what employers are looking for. They're looking for students and individuals who not only have the intellectual IQ, but the emotional IQs to work in an environment. And the extent to which you can do that and to find every opportunity to do that, that will really make you competitive.
Thank you. What would you say to people who are maybe interested in language study but are concerned about the amount of time it would take and the opportunities that might be available in studying a language?
I would not be intimidated by that. It's all about the investment. I would not look at how long it will take, but what you have to bring to the effort. Because anything that is worth, that provides the rewards at the end of the journey, it's not how long the journey takes, but what awaits for you at the end of the journey. And we understand when we read flash reports, so many students say that my life has been transformed by learning a language. My life has been transformed because I am the first to be able to have this kind of opportunity. And I realize that it's going to take time to get where I want to go, but the sacrifice of taking the time and investing time, again, is far greater than the goal is far greater than what it takes, the time it takes to get there. And the nation needs people to learn these languages. What we struggle with a lot when we, in my office, is when you get a letter from the Hill, not understanding of the importance of funding these programs. We have to explain it's the pipeline of training these students. It takes time. You're not going to learn Pashto or Tamil or Telugu or Indonesian overnight. It takes time to build the capacity. You know, one of the findings that Congress found when they authorized the program, they said that we understand, and one of our major findings in the statute is that this nation needs to build a global capacity. So you don't build capacity overnight. It takes time to build the infrastructure for these students to be able to then go out and contribute to society, to contribute to world events, to be able to respond to world events. So again, it's the journey and the goal and not the time that it takes to get there. So I would advise students to not be intimidated that I'm only at the intermediate level of my language and I have so much to do to get to the advanced level. Take your time, because that is the rich part of it, is sitting in with fellow students and with instructors who believe in you and whose own experiences that they are willing to share with you. They too can tell you that they did not learn these languages overnight. Their journeys too have been long and arduous, but the commitment is what makes it special. It makes it worthwhile. And that you become, think of yourselves as building a legacy for these programs and for education, for helping others. That's the richness of this. When we think about FLAS students going into Nigeria, FLAS students who learn Yoruba and can go into Nigeria and do a research project, or to sit with villagers and ask them about voting rights, to ask them about issues of gender, that is life transforming. So if you keep your eye on those kinds of goals and what you can contribute and what your legacy is, then that should be inspiration and motivation for you to stick with this no matter how long it takes. And that's why we fight for the funds for these programs, because what we offer through the Department of Education is a small piece, but that small lever changes lives, changes the world in ways that people do not often understand. And so that's why I am so committed to these programs, to continue to have the drumbeat for Title VI and Fulbright Hays, for folks to know that we are the only place that offers these discretionary grants to change lives and to change institutions, to change classrooms, so people understand the importance and the richness of engaging with other people who are not like us or who do not speak so we can engage with them in the language that they know. It reminds me of, and maybe religious studies students can reflect on this, it reminds me of the event in Acts when people got together and they all started speaking and understanding each other in their language. That was a life-changing event in Asia Minor. So when you take that example and you kind of apply that to what's happening in the world today, to learn a language, to cause for life events to be changed because you know the language and can relate to other people, is just invaluable.
Thank you. We have time for a few more questions. We have a question: what would you recommend to recent graduates that they prioritize in terms of learning while on the job search?
Repeat that again, please.
Certainly. So the question is, what would you recommend to recent graduates that they prioritize in terms of learning a language while on the job search?
They've already graduated. I would still keep connections with the persons to the extent that you can, to keep connections with your community of learners and through professional organizations, through internships, even though you're not having a formal job placement yet. But if you can seek out internships where you can use your language, because internship opportunities open up doors to job opportunities while they continue to let you use your language and to engage with others.
We also have a question about working in careers where clearance may be required, and what are some of the options that people have if they're looking for jobs that don't require clearance? And we can also bring this up with our next panel as well.
I think my panelists on the next panel would have a better understanding of the clearance process, because the clearance process is long and arduous for places like state and defense. Not as long as in the Department of Education, but the opportunities for using the foreign language at the Department of Education is not, the opportunities are not there. But I will defer to my panel that are coming up for the clearance issues because they are better equipped to talk about clearance issues.
And then we also got a question about applying for FLAS scholarships. And I know we'll be also talking about FLAS in our professional development session later on this afternoon, but that students were just kind of curious about what's looked for in terms of FLAS applications and what qualities or strengths they should emphasize.
Yes, the FLAS program regulations speak to being U.S. citizen or permanent resident. It also speaks to your grade point average and how you can demonstrate your capacity as a scholar. Not necessarily a scholar in the language, because some of you are at the intermediate level, and for some students at the graduate level, the institutions are allowed to award a beginning level fellowship. So it's looking at your overall academic excellence. It also looks at what you've been involved with is similar to what you do for your college admissions overall. To what extent can you engage with others? What kinds of projects have you been involved in that speak to your capacity to engage with others and to stay focused? And then also for the FLAS program, your grade point average, your overall GPA in your coursework. For students that are coming from high schools that did not have foreign language programs, especially in the least commonly taught languages, we defer to the institution that has the allocation of FLAS, to those FLAS selection committees to determine your ability to stick with the program and to enter a program. But as far as the Department of Education, we defer to the institution. We encourage the institutions to provide the opportunity to as many students as possible, because again, it's all about diversity, not only in the languages that you're selecting, but also the diversity in the individuals that are pursuing these opportunities. And so again, diversity, your GPA, how you demonstrate that you merit getting the fellowship, and the extent to which you have experience in engaging with other people in different opportunities that before you even get to your undergraduate training. What have you done in service areas? What have you done in maybe an IB course in your high school? So those are the things that we think are important when you apply for a FLAS fellowship. And then your institution will have some other selection criteria for determining whether you merit receiving a FLAS. And again, it's applying your skill to your passion, because most FLAS applications will ask you, where do you see yourself using the language? What are your goals for using the language? What do you want to contribute to society and to the world? And how will this language and your area of studies get you there? oftentimes students forget that the FLAS fellowship stands for foreign language and area studies. So area studies embraces the politics and the history and the religion and an understanding of other people. So you're linking your ambition for language acquisition to your content piece and your passion piece. So when you apply for a class, that's what you should be doing in your application, linking the language piece to your passion piece, to what really drives you to understand the world around you.
Leslie, can I ask one question to Cheryl? Okay. Cheryl, now there is significant discussion about jobs in the federal government, and I would like more and more. Actually, what I would like is a more personal answer in the sense of how rewarding has been for you working in the U.S. Department of Education over all these number of years.
It's been very rewarding. Leslie mentioned at the outset that I used to be an English teacher in a small town. Sharon, Pennsylvania is located about 80 miles north of Pittsburgh. And growing up in Sharon, Pennsylvania in the mid-50s and 60s, I graduated from high school in 1969. My experience in Sharon, with my parents and siblings, was a wonderful experience, but it wasn't a diverse experience. You would not find many people that look like me in Sharon, Pennsylvania. In fact, I was the first African-American teacher ever hired in the Sharon School District at the secondary level, and that didn't occur until 1973. So I taught English in a predominantly non-Black school, high school, although I had matriculated through Sharon High School, as had my father, who is now 95, and my siblings. So our experience in Sharon was very narrow, but we were determined that as my parents had goals and expectations for their children, one of whom became a medical doctor, one is a chief nursing officer at Howard University Hospital, and I went into education because at that time I felt that African-American students should never go through 12 years of school and not look up and see a teacher that looked like them. So I had that wonderful experience for 8 years in Sharon. But when I was laid off, I decided to go to either one or the other locations where my siblings were. One was in Arizona, and the other was here in Washington, D.C. So I came to Washington, D.C., and I applied for a career internship at the U.S. Department of Education in 1984. I stayed home for a couple of years, but then I decided that I had to really expand my own horizons. So I moved to Washington, D.C. in 1984. I applied to a career internship with the Department of Education, and thankfully I had 3 offers in different parts of the department, but I chose the Office of Post-Secondary Education. And for probably 10 years, I worked in higher programs that focus more on student access programs, like I mentioned before, strengthening institutions programs. There was a veterans program that is now no longer funded, but I've worked in other areas in the department in the Office of Post-Secondary Ed. In the early 1990s, the director of the Center for International Education, that was the name at that time, the director approached me and asked me, would you like to come work in the Centers for International Education? And I jumped at the opportunity, and that's when I came over to work in the international education programs, and I have been there ever since. And when I first moved to Washington, I thought that the voids can never be filled from missing teaching students a wonderful opportunity, and teaching is just the most rewarding career that one can pursue. I definitely support teaching, but to move into an arena where you see grant funding going to institutions that are training teachers and training students, it's an extension of my commitment to education and to teaching that has just been so fulfilling and has allowed me to, with every fiber of my being, to support these programs and to be a voice for them at the department. So that's my journey, and it's been wonderful to meet you, Guido, and Laura, and in my capacity as senior director, and even before that, I have worked on several international education programs, and so I have, fostered relationships with faculty and project directors and center directors and American Overseas Research Centers directors over my course of time in IFL that are just very rich and just keep motivating me every single day, even when you think that the message is not getting through as you would like it to get through internally. The fight is still there because I see what these programs can do, and I am determined, as are my colleagues, Tim and Carolyn and Sarah Beaton and Gary Thomas and Pamela Mamer and so forth. And I'm naming names that are probably familiar to you, but collectively we have such a commitment to these programs because our national security depends on it, our economic viability depends upon it. Students in classrooms, even though we do not do K-12 education directly, through the outreach programs that we do, through the language resource centers initiatives, children and teachers at the K-12 level are impacted too. And that I don't want anyone's experience to be as narrow as mine was in Sharon, Pennsylvania. As important as it was, and I had no sort of control over the circumstances of growing up where I did, although I have no regrets because it allowed me to understand certain things. But I think it's so important to be in the position and the institutions that are served by these programs and the students that benefit from these programs. You have an awesome, awesome mission to change lives throughout the American education spectrum, and these programs are the way to do it.
Thank you, Cheryl, very much.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. We really appreciate everything that you and everyone at the Department of Education does, and we are very grateful that you have been able to make time for us this morning. I know we had some more questions coming with Cheryl. Unfortunately, the time for this panel is up, but we will save those questions for the end as we move into our next session, so that for the remainder of the event, we're going to be having panel sessions. And I will introduce each panel and briefly introduce each panelist with their name and affiliation before their presentation. And to maximize the amount of time that we have for presentations and questions, we're going to keep these introductions brief, but please visit our website for biographies of all of our esteemed speakers and links to their organizations. And then at the end of each session, if time permits, we'll ask questions, but otherwise we'll save them for the final Q&A session at the end of the program. So now it is my pleasure to introduce our first panel session on opportunities for speakers of less commonly taught languages in the government, and our first panelists, who are Hillary Robertson Collado, the Assistant Director of Bourne Awards at the Institute of International Education, and Aaliyah McCollum, the Program Officer of the National Security Education Program, Department of Defense.
Great. Thank you so much, Felicia. And thank you to all of our colleagues at the University of Wisconsin for allowing us this opportunity to be here today to talk to everyone about the Bourne Awards, which, dare I say, is one of my most favorite things to talk about. So again, my name is Hillary. I manage the Bourne Awards at IIE, and we are really privileged and honored to administer these on behalf of our sponsor at the National Security Education Program. I'm delighted to be here co-presenting with Alea from NSEP today. I'm going to start by just giving a very brief overview. And the Boren Awards are really unique in their focus on long-term language-focused study abroad and on applicants' commitment to public service. So the Boren Scholarship is for undergraduates and the Boren Fellowship is for graduate students. And students of all proficiency levels are welcome to apply. Boren scholars and fellows are from a diverse array of backgrounds and fields of study, and they really immerse themselves in the cultures of world regions that are underrepresented in study abroad. If you'll head to the next slide. Great. So this is a snapshot of eligibility requirements, and the one thing I want to note here is that Boren Awards can provide substantial levels of funding for this long-term overseas experience focusing on language study, but that experience can also incorporate an internship and/or a research component as well. Next slide. So I also, one of my favorite things about this program is I really think about the Boren Awards as a choose your own adventure, right? So applicants are proposing their own study abroad plan. They're tailoring it to their academic interests, to your personal experience, and your professional goals. And as you can see here, Boren awardees study in a wide range of countries. The 2020 cohort alone represents 46 different countries with 45 different languages. Next slide. Applicants also have the ability to apply to what are called the Regional Flagship Language Initiatives, affectionately known as the FLEET, 3 of which are hosted here at the University of Wisconsin. So we have TURFLI for Turkish, we have SAFLI for Hindi Urdu, IFLI for Indonesian, and these are more structured programs, right? So it's comprised of an intensive domestic summer, an intensive overseas fall semester, and then an optional spring extension that you can design. That's the choose your own adventure piece. And these programs are really, they're incredible programs, and they also allow students who apply to them and participate in them to really gain huge amounts of linguistic proficiency in a very short amount of time. So I'm going to end here. Actually, it's a very brief snapshot. That's fine. And then I'm actually going to hand it over to Alea, who is going to give you her insight and a lot of really fascinating information about federal career opportunities for Boren scholars and fellows. So with that, Alea.
Great. Thank you, Hillary. Again, my name is Alea Makulam. I'm a program officer with the National Security Education Program. We are the Department of Defense sponsors of the Boren Awards. So now I'll transition to talking a little bit more about the federal service aspect of the program. And I always say that the Boren is really more than just your typical study abroad. And one of the major things that distinguish Boren from other programs is its unique emphasis on public service. In exchange for funding Boren awardees, they agree to work for the federal government for at least 1 year. And during the application process, we ask you to think about how your foreign language and study abroad country matter to U.S. national security. How might those language and cultural skills that you gain abroad be of use in a federal career? What position might be a good fit for you? And we do prioritize applicants who demonstrate a longer-term commitment to working in government beyond that initial requirement. Those who really see the Boren as a stepping stone to a public service career. So where can you work as a Boren scholar or fellow? I think we might be a couple of slides ahead, but about 3 slides back, right here, yes. So here on this slide, you can see what we call our priority agencies. So these are the Department of Defense, including civilian and military positions, state, including USAID, Homeland Security, and the intelligence community. So the majority of our alumni are working in these 4 priority agencies. And I'll mention regarding the intelligence community, there are 17 member organizations in the intel community. Of course, all of the famous 3-letter agencies that we've heard of, such as CIA and FBI. But there are also intel offices within the cabinet level departments. For example, state has their own Bureau of Intelligence and Research. The Department of Treasury has their Office of Intelligence and Analysis looking at terrorist financing and sanctions. And so we have Borens working at all levels and in all kinds of national security positions within these priority agencies. Next slide, please. So aside from the priority agencies that I mentioned, we have Borens really government-wide at places such as International Trade Administration, Department of Justice, Department of Agriculture, and we also have many scholars and fellows serving in the Peace Corps, either as volunteers overseas or even working at headquarters domestically. The government, of course, is huge, and there are so many different options in terms of career fields. So if you're interested in public service, you're interested in the Boren, as you're formulating your application and thinking about what departments and agencies might be a good fit, we just encourage you to think really broadly and creatively about where you might be able to use your different skill sets. Next slide, please. So on this slide, I have just a few sample job titles to give you a sense of where our Boren scholars and fellows work and what they might be doing. And so there are opportunities to serve in the federal government, both domestically and overseas. And you can see the first position listed on the slide here is Foreign Agricultural Officer. And most people have, of course, heard about the Foreign Service with the U.S. State Department. However, there's also a Foreign Service through USAID, the Department of Agriculture, and the Department of Commerce. These FSOs spend the majority of their career serving at our embassies and consulates abroad. Borens also serve domestically in positions such as the International Trade Specialist position at Commerce that you can see on the slide, or Regional Affairs Officer at Homeland Security. And positions like these are typically based in the U.S., but they do offer plenty of opportunities for short-term travel, both within the United States and internationally. So you might have the opportunity to be attending meetings or conferences overseas with our foreign counterparts. As you can see on the slide, many of these positions also have a particular regional focus. So it's certainly helpful for candidates to come in with specialized language skills, overseas experience, and for our Boren awardees, that linguistic and regional skill set gained overseas really sets them apart in the job search. And apart from the hard language skills, there's also the soft skills you develop abroad, flexibility, resilience, that are also highly valued in the federal workforce. And also quickly mention that Borens don't necessarily need to serve in language-enabled positions or positions that require a foreign language, even though that's what many of them end up doing. We have folks working in the federal space as researchers at the CDC, data analysts at Census, physicians at Veterans Affairs. So whatever your particular academic and professional background, whether it's STEM or finance or what have you, you can find a government job that fits your interests. Next slide, please. And now I'll talk for a bit about how NCEP assists Boren awardees with the job search. So to quickly clarify, NCEP does not place award recipients into federal jobs. It is the awardee's responsibility to find an appropriate position, but we do offer extensive job search support every step of the way, from the initial interview to negotiating that final offer, to help the scholars and fellows secure that federal employment. So to do that, we have a dedicated NCEP service team. We work individually with each awardee. We do things like resume and cover letter review, mock interview help. We have a mentorship program that matches Borens to mid-level to senior alumni in the federal government to help give them that insider perspective. We also partner with federal government agencies to create exclusive job openings available only to NCEP alumni. And these jobs are listed on the ncepnet.org site. You can check out our site if you'd like. Some recent exclusive positions that were just for our community include a foreign affairs specialist at the Department of Defense working on counterterrorism issues, as well as program analyst at the Department of Treasury researching sanctions. And we're able to offer those exclusive job opportunities because of what are called special hiring authorities granted to our Boren community. So all Boren scholars and fellows have these two authorities called Schedule A and NDAA 13. And basically what this means is it allows government agencies to hire Borens for federal jobs without competing against the US public. So it's a completely streamlined hiring process in place for Borens. It can be really tough getting into government, and so these hiring authorities are a tremendous benefit for anyone looking to get their foot in the door. Next slide, please. And I'll quickly say, if you're interested in the Bourne Awards and a public service career, we encourage you to start thinking about where you might work, where you can apply those skills. A great place to start is bourneawards.org. You can check out the information and stats about where previous Bournes have fulfilled their service. You can also check out usajobs.gov for a broad overview of what the government is currently recruiting for. And you can also do some more targeted research. Every department and agency has their own website laying out their mission and priorities. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Hillary. Happy to answer any questions you might have at the end.
Great. And if you'll go to the next slide. Very briefly, these are the application requirements. You can find much more detail at the Bourne Awards website, including the actual essay prompts and tips and other ideas for resources. Next slide. The 2021 application will officially open on August 15th. So you can find all the information right now as it relates to the 2020, the previous cycle. Great time to get started. Deadlines are not until late January and early February. So you have plenty of time to research and look through all the information that's on the website. And next slide. And I'll just note that we would love to hear from you. If you have any questions throughout the process, please do not hesitate to reach out to our team. We are always very happy to talk to applicants and to hear your ideas and your questions. And with that, I'll just end by noting, reiterating really what Alea mentioned, which is that, you know, the Bourne Awards, it's not just a scholarship and a fellowship to allow you to have this amazing opportunity to spend a really long, immersive study abroad program overseas. It really is a pathway to a career in the federal government. And so we welcome your questions at the end. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Alea and Hillary. And yes, please keep the great questions coming. We will bring them up at the end of the session and in the Q&A. So I will introduce our next panelist, who is Jomer Ta'ala, who is the Assistant Provost of Educational Technology and Development at the Defense Language Institute Foreign Language Center. So Jomer, take it away.
Thanks. So, am I on? Okay. So
yes, you are.
All right, thank you. There's nothing more exciting to me next to my family and to my faith than to talking about foreign language teaching, foreign language education. And so I thank Felicia and Laura for this opportunity and Essie for this opportunity to share with you my own experiences with regard to less commonly taught languages. I feel kind of weird because I'm talking about something that I did in the past. It's not currently part of my present position, present job. Less commonly taught languages, we call it at DLI actually low density languages. But it's so if I switch a little bit back to low density, you know why. I have this, what do you call that, a slip of the tongue moment sometimes. So immediately. So less commonly taught languages are a what do you call this? It's DLI Washington's turf, and I'm currently now over back in Monterey in California, where we don't actually teach less commonly taught languages. These languages are usually taught at DLI Washington, but I know a little bit about that because I was at DLI Washington for over 3 years as academic advisor of the Afghanistan-Pakistan language HANDS language training program. So what do we mean by, we have a definite definition of less commonly taught languages at DLI, and that is that in over 83 different languages that have been taught at DLI Washington, there's only very few students we have very few training requirements for these languages. So that's what we mean by less commonly taught languages. It's not because it's the number of training requirements that determine whether a language is less commonly taught or not. There may be an abundant number of instructors available, we wish, but it's not the determining factor. The determining factor for less commonly taught languages is the number of training requests, of training requirements from, as you may already know, from the federal government, DOD, different agencies with the federal government. So that's what it means. That's what we mean by less commonly taught languages in the DLI FLC context. So as you can see there, a quick snapshot of the languages that we have, that we consider less commonly taught. So Nepali, Tamil, Uyghur, Uzbek, Mai. Some of these, the most recent one that I remember when I was still up in DC was a request for Tuareg, which is actually a variation of Berber. So that one was really tough. We had to re-language the student because the teacher that we were able to get was not even a real Tuareg speaker. He was a Berber speaker who, I don't want to say pretended, but that is actually what kind of happened. So we had to re-language. We had to tell the service unit that, hey, it turns out that this teacher, face-to-face instruction at that time, was not really a Tuareg speaker. So we had to re-language the student and change schools as well. So that's one of, as next slide, please. So that was a preview of the challenges that we have. The one that I mentioned to you about lack of available instructors. So the challenges that we see with less commonly taught languages are the ones listed here on the slide. Availability of standardized tests is major. So availability of materials, availability of instructors, lack of ongoing work. I mean, we were lucky to have, for example, I mentioned Mai in the previous slide. It was mentioned in the previous slide. Mai, as I said, is a variation. It's a dialect of Somali. And the instructor just happened, one of our instructors just happened to know Mai as well, and he was building the curriculum as they were actually conducting the class. So collecting materials again is a struggle, is a challenge. Lack of student support, as you may know, if you are by yourself in a classroom, that's a challenge for the learner himself. So unlike when you are in a class with other students, the student support, the peer support, will help the language learner as well. Next slide, please. So these are some of the mitigating efforts that we employ to ameliorate the situation. So as you may know, DLI Washington does not really teach languages aside from Russian. That's the only language that we have federal employees who are actually teaching the students. But the rest of the languages that we teach over at DLI Washington, over 83 so far languages, they are all contracted out. So we require vendors to provide us compensation plans. How are you going to train your instructor in terms of teaching to a particular population of students? And we are, of course, a specific population, federal agents, service members, that's a specific population. Academic advising is another mitigating effort that we have in place. So there has to be a monthly counseling report from the vendors to us, to the government, making sure that the students' needs are taken care of. Next slide, please. Student support. So we make sure that the students know what they are getting into. A majority of our students are actually repeat offenders, meaning that they have studied foreign language before, well and good. But for those who are first timers, we have them undergo Introduction to Language Studies workshop for 1 whole day. And there are also optional workshops offered by us, academic advisors at DLI Washington, with regard to the LPT, Defense Language Proficiency Test, oral proficiency, interview readiness, that's OPI, and pronunciation issues and stuff like that. And finally, next slide, please. We also offer teacher support. So we require schools to provide their own professional development training. And at the same time, the academic advisors on the government side also provide orientation. We cannot really train, as you may already know, we cannot really train non-federal employees. So we provide orientations to them. And that concludes my brief spiel for how we do less commonly taught languages at DLI. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jomer. We'll be saving the questions that everyone's been submitting. And our next panelists are Abigail Barnes, who is the recruitment analyst at the U.S. Department of State in the Bureau of Consular Affairs and Bureau of Global Challenge Management, and Ron Pakowitz, who is our diplomat in residence Midwest.
Hello. So really quickly before we begin, on your screen should be a slide containing a registration link in the form of a QR code, which you can just, if you're interested in signing up with our talent community to keep in touch with us about the Consular Fellows Program or other foreign service opportunities, as well as civil service internships and fellowships, you can point your phone's camera at the code and it should redirect you to our sign up. We also have our email addresses for myself and diplomat in residence Ron Pakowitz, who's here with me today. And my name is Abigail Barnes, and I handle Consular Fellows Program recruitment outreach on our recruitment team. And we're so delighted to speak with you today and share a bit about the Consular Fellows Program, or CFP, and other priority language recruitment opportunities in the Foreign Service, and also answer any questions you might have later. So the Department of State is the federal government's leading foreign affairs agency that works to shape and sustain a peaceful, prosperous, just, and democratic world, and also fosters conditions for stability and progress for the benefit of American people and people everywhere. And our recruitment team itself strives to recruit a diverse and talented workforce that is prepared to advance U.S. national security interests in every corner of the world. And our team is made up of 16 diplomats in residence and 10 or so national recruiters. DIRs are senior foreign service officers who provide guidance and advice to students and professionals in various regions about careers, internships, and fellowships with the Department of State. And I am joined today by our DIR in the Midwest region, Ron Pakowitz. So CFP, the Consular Fellows Program specifically, is a really unique national service opportunity with the department to live and work overseas as a real part of an embassy or consulate community. And Consular Fellows use their Arabic, Mandarin Chinese, Portuguese, and or Spanish language skills on the ground on a daily basis to provide critical consular services at U.S. missions overseas. So CFP is a 5-year appointment to the Foreign Service, and the selection process itself is a bit simpler than, but quite similar to, the process of becoming a career Foreign Service officer. Also, career Consular Fellows, unlike their career Foreign Service officer counterparts, all come into the service with previously acquired language skills. So the applicant pool is really a bit more limited by that perspective. And this is a great advantage since the Foreign Service tends to be very selective. So I'm now going to give the floor to our DIR for the Midwest region, Ron Packwitz, who is a consular officer, cone officer, who will be describing consular fellow work and the impact of their work.
Thanks, Abby. My name is Ron. Right, I'm a Foreign Service officer. I've been in the Foreign Service for the State Department for about 20 years. And most of that time I've spent as a consular officer doing the kind of work that you might have a chance to do if you were part of the Consular Fellows program. Consular Fellows work alongside consular officers as equals when they're working overseas at our embassies and consulates. And I wanted to give you just a couple of examples of the kind of work you might find yourself doing if you were working as a consular officer or a consular fellow. Many of you, I'm sure, travel frequently, perhaps, and but imagine an American citizen who's traveling abroad, maybe a tourist, maybe alone, maybe doesn't have a lot of travel experience, doesn't have language skills like many of like you do, and while traveling overseas alone, falls ill, becomes seriously ill, and is hospitalized, and is encountering a healthcare system that they don't understand, and doesn't have the language skills to communicate with doctors and nurses at the hospital where they're being cared for. Maybe doesn't know how to reach out to their family back home in the United States to ask for help. And that's where consular officers come in. And you as a consular professional might be sent out to the hospital directly there to meet with this person and help them understand what's happening. And most importantly for you to use your foreign language skills to help that person and maybe their loved ones back home navigate that kind of really very serious personal crisis. That kind of thing happens every day around the world. Maybe not so much right now because there isn't a lot of tourism, but during ordinary times, those kinds of things are happening every day, and it's consular officers who are coming to the rescue, really. Another way we come to the rescue, over the past 4 months, as you know, more than 100,000 Americans who were traveling overseas have been brought back to the United States with help from the State Department. Many of them were stranded abroad in countries as far as Peru and Morocco, where they were not able to leave their hotel rooms and were prevented from traveling to airports to get on flights. And it was left to consular officers, consular fellows to help those people get to an airport and onto a plane, often chartered by consular professionals at the State Department, and to rescue all of those stranded Americans and bring them home during this global crisis. One other aspect of consular work I want to mention is the visa process. Consular officers also make the decisions about who is legally eligible to come to the United States with a U.S. visa. And that's done by sitting down and talking face-to-face with people, tourists, student exchange participants, and permanent residents, people who want to be permanent residents of the United States with a green card. It involves sitting down with them and talking to them in their language and finding out what their intentions are and ensuring that, that they are entitled to receive a U.S. visa to come to the United States. So those are the kinds of things you might be doing as a consular fellow in the working for the State Department. And with that, I'm going to pass it back to Abby to talk a little bit about the eligibility requirements and how the hiring process works.
Thanks, Ron. So to be eligible to become a consular fellow specifically, and some of these are the same as eligibility requirements for career foreign service officer or specialist, you have to be a U.S. citizen, you have to be at least 20 to submit an application, and you have to be able to receive and maintain a top secret security clearance, and be able to serve in the countries you would be assigned to that speak your program language. And in addition to those, you would have to be able to speak and read one of the program languages at the required level. So if you speak multiple languages, that's awesome, and you can actually apply for multiple languages for the CFP application. So limited or elementary working proficiency is required in speaking and reading. So for the Portuguese speaking exam, if you speak Portuguese, you're able to take the exam in continental or Brazilian dialects, and it requires a level 2 in speaking, limited working proficiency, which means you can give a simple message over the telephone or report the facts of something that you've seen recently on the news, that kind of thing. And then level 2 reading means that you might be able to understand straightforward news reports or biographical information. So that's for Portuguese. And Spanish also requires a level 2, just like Portuguese, in speaking and reading. And then for Mandarin trainees, candidates speaking Mandarin can request to read simplified or traditional characters. And the test requires a limited working proficiency in speaking, but only elementary proficiency in reading. So being able to understand straightforward street directions, that kind of thing. And then for Arabic, candidates can actually test in 4 different groups of Arabic dialects. Now, this is all the Consular Fellows program. There are 4 required for program languages. So Arabic dialects that you can elect to test in include Modern Standard Arabic, General Arabic, which includes Egyptian and Levantine dialects, Eastern Arabic, which includes all of the Gulf, and then Western Arabic, which covers Morocco, Tunisia, Algiers, and Libya. And so the selection process for foreign service officers and specialists, so career tracks, is also very similar to the Consular Fellows program. So you apply by providing resume information, like in several personal narrative responses, and a brief written statement that are going to touch on some of our 12 dimensions of success as a foreign service candidate. Things like experience and motivation, leadership, and initiatives. Then after you submit your application for the Consular Fellows program, you can schedule and sit for the Consular Fellows program test, which is offered year-round at any Pearson VUE testing center, and it's a multiple choice exam with 4 sections. So visa regulation comprehension, job knowledge like U.S. and world history, geography and economics, English expression, and behavioral judgment. And so passers of the CFPT, Consular Fellows Program test, go on to a panel here at State that reviews the application, that invites successful candidates to the language exams like I described before, and speaking and reading. And then the last step of the assessment process is an in-person oral assessment in Washington, D.C., where you would be asked to participate in a case management written exercise and a structured interview focusing on consular section hypothetical scenarios and personal experience and motivation. Then successful candidates go right into clearance processing for their security, medical, and suitability review clearances. And the process from beginning to end can typically take about 1 to 2 years. Now, I'll pass it back over to Ron to discuss CFP pay and benefits and sort of wrap it up for us.
Thanks, Abby. Well, I am going to wrap it up pretty quickly because I know I think we're running out of time. But I do want to say that there are a lot of obviously the Consular Fellows program is not the only way to come work for the U.S. Department of State. I'm a foreign service officer. That's another way to come work with us. The hiring process actually works quite similar to the one that Abby just described for the Consular Fellows program. And foreign service officers are not a limited appointment. We have a career appointment, and we do consular work, which is what I've been doing, but there are a bunch of other things we do as part of really the U.S. diplomatic corps. So if you're interested in the work of foreign service officers generally, you can, I believe our hosts are going to put that slide back up before we finish so that you can take a photo of the QR code that we had up there. If not, go to our website at careers.state.gov where you will learn all about opportunities with us, the Consular Fellows program, working as a foreign service officer, also some of the specialist positions we have for people who, for example, have expertise with IT or STEM. Being a foreign service officer or working as a consular fellow is a unique opportunity to serve your country abroad and do remarkable work and also have a very exciting life. I have had opportunities to work and travel in Ecuador, Colombia, Germany, the UK, most recently in Afghanistan. And not just to visit those places, but to live in them and be part of those communities and have friends and get to know their cities and their towns and attend their weddings and their parties, and just to be part of another community like that for years at a time is a really fantastic experience. And I'd encourage any of you who think that would be something you'd like to do to please, again, take a shot of that QR code or visit us at careers.state.gov. And again, you have our email addresses there, and you're welcome to send me an email if you'd like to follow up on this conversation at dirmidwest@state.gov. And I look forward to getting your questions during the Q&A a little later today. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Ron and Abby. And yes, we will have this information available on the website too for everybody after this event. And we apologize that we're running a little late on our schedule, but we really have appreciated the great presentations and the discussion questions that you guys have raised. And just like Ron mentioned, we're going to be moving into the next panel. However, we are saving your questions from the chat so that we can have more discussion in the Q&A at the end of the event. So now I'm going to transition to our panel session number 2, opportunities for speakers of less commonly taught languages in the private sector. And I am introducing Ann Fisher, who is Senior Lecturer in Translation and Interpreting Studies at University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. I want to first say thank you to Felicia and Ellie for arranging this forum and for inviting me to take part. Just to give I know we're running a little short on time, so I will try to be as concise as possible. I am a literary translator, but I also worked for almost 7 years in the government sector. I was a contract linguist for the Department of Justice for Russian, and I did a little bit of German. And then my sort of third role is in academia. I teach translation, and specifically the Russian to English translation workshop at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee Translation and Interpreting Studies program. So I kind of maybe bridge the previous panel and the panel that's following, because I've had some government experience and I've had some experience, preparing and giving professional opportunities to budding translators. Just to tell you a little bit, in case you are thinking, sometimes I need a little help from mom and dad or a relative to help with the tuition or something like that, and you might need to be able to offer some hard, solid facts that this is, being a translator is something, worth putting money into. I'll just share a couple of quotations, some data. One is from this link here that I'm putting in the chat. Let's see. So this is this Gala Global Industry Facts and Data. There's a research marketing company called Common Sense Advisory that researches sort of trends in the language service industry. And at this quote that I just put in the chat bar, it says that the language industry is big business, according to a report on the language services market in 2018 by CSA, Common Sense Advisory. The global market for outsourced language services and technology will reach $46 billion in 2018, and the prediction is that by 2021, that market will increase to $56 billion worldwide. So those are some pretty big figures. There's another sort of resource I'd like to share, so I'm going to put that in the chat as well. Let's see. And this is a very interesting document that I invite you all to look through if you're thinking of being freelancers, because this is sort of a report. It's a 2020 report on the state of the linguist supply chain, which is, if we want, humans to be able to do translation in the future, we need to have humans who speak languages and who are trained in translation and interpreting. So, how's that supply, that pipeline looking? And one of the, I'll just read you a little bit from the very end. They write that the departure of qualified linguists from the talent pool, combined with historic drops in enrollment in language studies, is likely to create a shortage of resources. An additional factor is widespread media coverage of machine translation developers' claims to have reached human parity, quote unquote. These reports could lead many students to believe that studying language is a dead-end field with no future. These factors will lead to a future drought of qualified individuals, the smart linguists who understand technology and can help with machine learning, improving machine translation, expanding seamless integration. And kind of the bottom line of this 2020 Linguist Supply Chain Report is tightening supply on top of growing demand make it inevitable that most language service providers will find challenges in finding and retaining qualified staff. So this, to me, has a positive side, benefit, which is that if you are highly qualified and competent, you are going to be sought out and you are going to be able to have a job. I wanted to also share an anecdote or two for those of you who might be thinking, well, why does translation really matter all that much anyway? Of course, if you're here, you're probably not thinking that, but I'll give you a couple of anecdotes for you to pass around in case you, need to justify the importance of your chosen profession. This is, by the way, I'm reading from this book called Found in Translation. And if you have not read this book, I highly encourage you to check it out. It has wonderful examples of how translation works and why translation is needed, especially, again, in the business world. There's the case in the 80s of the $71 million word. This is when, in Florida, a patient named Willie Ramirez was admitted into a Florida hospital, and they didn't find a qualified medical interpreter to help, ask what was happening, what was wrong with him. They found, a family member of his who, spoke enough English and enough Spanish, and they kind of just made it work. And when they used the wrong word, they used a word that was a false friend. So they said the word intoxicado, and it was interpreted by the English side of the transaction as meaning he's intoxicated, which that's not what it means in Spanish. But because there was not a qualified a medical interpreter, they kind of went with what they thought it sounded like. And because it was a false cognate, it does not actually mean intoxicated. It means poisoned. So Willie Ramirez was wrongly diagnosed, wrongly treated, and he received a medical malpractice settlement of $71 million. So hospitals beware. Another example that's close to my heart is the Nikita Khrushchev in 1956, the famous incident at the UN where he's, banging his sandal saying, "Amuy vas pokharanim." That does not, in fact, mean, well, it literally word for word means we will bury you, but it doesn't mean we will kill you and put you in your grave. What it actually means is we will be around after you're dead. We'll be attending your funeral because you will have already gone and we'll still be around. So it kind of more means we'll outlast you, but the translating the literal word for word meaning of an idiom is tricky, and in this case, it was the wrong choice because it made it seem much less worse than it was. Although, admittedly, since he was banging his sandal on the podium, you could see that maybe there was a tendency to interpret it in the worst, most severe way possible. I just have a couple of minutes left, so I will say that one of the best things about working for the Department of Justice was, there's pluses and minuses to every aspect or area of, of translation. One of the best pluses of working for the government is you never know what's going to come across your plate, and you cannot take your work home. Once you leave the office, you're done. And especially for, people with families or other jobs, that's very valuable. One of the things to keep in mind about freelancing and my particular subcategory of freelancing, which is literary translation, all literary translation is freelancing, but not all freelancing is literary. In fact, very little of it. If you want to become a freelancer, my suggestion is to go with one of the three ways or routes to kind of make yourself stand out. Is one, have a specialization. So like get a law degree or, go to nursing school, get those extra sort of provable specializations behind you. Two is get a certification or a degree. Three is join the ATA, the American Translators Association. That opened a lot of doors for me. And then just to wrap it up, literary translation, one of the things I like a lot about literary translation that people are surprised by is that it's not how much you speak the source language, the language you're translating from, it's also how well you translate English. If you're translating a novel, you need to be a good novelist. And I'll close with this quote. Gregory Rabassa, the famous Spanish to English translator who translated the great hits from Spanish into English, like 100 Years of Solitude, he was asked by an interviewer, but are you sure you speak Spanish well enough to translate Gabriel Garcia Marquez? And Gregory Rabassa laughed at him and said, Spanish? No, you need to ask if my English is good enough to translate him. So if you enjoy speaking and reading and writing literature in English, I highly suggest that you check out the ALTA, American Literary Translators Association. And with that, I'll let it go. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Annie. We'll be sure to share those resources on the website, and there'll be opportunities to ask questions in the Q&A session. And now we'll move on to our next panelist, who is Anya Green, who is the Content Development Manager at Mango Languages.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. I will be uploading a file really quick to share my presentation from. So give me 1 second while this opens. Okay. So it'll be there shortly. Again, my name is Anya Green. I'm here on behalf of Mango Languages, and I want to thank you, first of all, for the honor and the opportunity of speaking with you here. I'm going to introduce myself briefly, just to give a little bit of background. So I'm the Content Development Manager at Mango Languages currently. I was born and raised in Germany, and in fact was born in the former east of Germany, so behind the wall. And when the wall came down, I was one of the first language classes, the first generation, first grade, that got to choose between studying English as the first foreign language or continuing with Russian, which was commonplace until then because it was a communist country. So I decided to go with the new and cool thing. I decided to study English, and thusly my love for language learning was born. I realized that languages are fun for me. It's something I enjoy, and a few years later, after studying many more languages throughout school, because that's common in Europe, decided that I wanted to pursue a career in language. Now, I did not have a fantastic fair like this year to figure out all of the opportunities that there are out there, and it was a little bit harder for me to determine what I wanted to do that I would enjoy, that would bring me joy in my work and also earn me a living. But at some point, I settled on translation and got my master's degree in applied linguistics and translation from Leipzig University in Germany. At some point, I moved to the US because while I came to the US briefly to study language, I met my now husband, and we moved back to the United States to start our life together here, where I then started my freelancing business in translation as well. So I freelanced for quite a long time until at some point I came to Mango. Mango found me, where I've now been for over 11 years. I lead teams of linguists and native speakers there, and we work with team members in my department from all over the world, both in the office and remotely, to create the learning content that you can find in our online courses, to develop new tools and new features that provide language learning to various user bases, and to administer online language classes in various ways for all different types of users. We offer self-paced language learning courses. In case you're not familiar with Mango, those courses are available in over 70 world languages. So many of the languages we're talking about here today are represented by us. And we have English courses, of course, as well, and specialty units that focus on certain topics a little bit more in depth. Our methodology is conversation-based, so we use the communicative approach to really help the learner understand concepts intuitively without drilling grammar, and we use critical thinking exercises to really drive the point home and to deliver language that you can start using right away in whatever situation you are pursuing. Now, where does Mango get used? For those of you who maybe are not familiar with us, public libraries are basically our bread and butter market. We have libraries subscribing to Mango who then provide this to their patrons for free. Of course, we have individual subscriptions available as well in various app stores. And then we also serve the corporate market and schools in academia and K-12. Not working? Okay. Now, Mango Classroom specifically is our solution for schools and universities. We deliver content there that's been aligned with internationally recognized standards, because obviously that's very important for schools. We include specific lesson planning materials and print exercises that bridge the classroom with our software. And of course, very important for teachers, we offer classroom management features that allow teachers to set up their classes and monitor their students' progress. The type of work we hire for in this space is usually for language experts that develop and edit our courses, the online courses, using the Mango methodology and typical common second language acquisition principles, if you're familiar with any of those. We create teacher resources, lesson plans, and those classroom activities. And of course, our SMEs all over the world always update and improve our content. Most commonly in commonly taught languages, of course, because the demand there is highest, but many of our less commonly taught languages need those updates as well, of course. In the corporate space, we also offer something called Mango Live. And Mango Live is a system that delivers language classes virtually to group classes and individuals. And we typically work with relocation management companies here in the corporate sector who are sending employees overseas and need to prepare them to function in that country. So we have our coaches come in from around the globe and deliver those classes to support those unique schedules, of course, so they work in different time zones, and to create content on demand that's customized for the learning goals of each of those particular students. So just really briefly, because I know we need to hurry up, what does it look like to work in Mango Languages? When there's not a global pandemic, we do have an office, of course, that we are present in. Typically, our office in Farmington Hills, Michigan, houses about 60 to 80, I call them language enthusiasts, because our employees all have to be fluent in another language or actively study one. And that's something that probably makes us stand out in this market, but we really want every single one of our employees to understand, first of all, what it's like to be in the shoes of a language learner or a speaker of another language, and to really understand long-term language learning, not just playing around with a language for a couple of minutes because it's fun. So seeing what it's like to hit that first plateau, or the joys you experience when you're first able to speak with someone in that language. So it's very important for us that everyone from sales to marketing to software developers know how to empathize with language learners. We, of course, also have teleworking opportunities. My department specifically does this the most. I myself am remote, so I'm not in the office in Michigan, at least not typically. And most of my department is not either. My department is located around the world, and especially those part-time subject matter experts truly are from all places of the world. Their work is always done online, of course, using a lot of collaborative tools, Google Docs, Zoom, Slack, and so on, to deliver their work, to collaborate, and to really hone the product and make it the best we can make it. Now, if you have any questions about the jobs we have available, please visit the careers page on our website, www.mangolanguages.com. You can also contact me directly, anya.green@mangolanguages.com. I'm the hiring manager for essentially everything related to language experts. So if you have questions about anything you see, don't hesitate to reach out to me. Please know that our exhibitor profile that came with this career fair also has a link to Mango's profile on Indeed. So if you'd like to see just what it's like to work for Mango and to be Mango in general, go check that out. There's a link there. And of course, you can also see our social media, YouTube channels, Instagram, and so on to get a little bit of a better feel for who we are and how we work. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anya. And as she mentioned, we have these resources available on the website, so please come back and visit. And we've been noting your questions in the chat. For those of you just signing on, please note that we are running a little bit behind schedule because of the great presentations and discussion questions, but we are going to be saving those questions for the end of the session and moving on to the next panel, which is by Janelle Hawk, who is in the translation team at EPIC. So thank you, Janelle.
Thank you. So I am the lead localization manager at EPIC. And to start off, I just want to give a little bit of background about what EPIC is. It's a healthcare software company located in the Madison area in Verona. And it's a very large company. There's about 10,000 employees and only about 40 of us who work with translation and language specifically. About 60% of patients in the US are cared for by a doctor who uses EPIC. So we are a very large software company in the US, and we've been expanding internationally for the past 10 years. And we're up to 44 different healthcare organizations in over 14 different countries that we serve. And our translation team is so integral to that because the majority of the world is non-English speaking, and we are the people who make healthcare accessible to them when their doctors and those patients are using EPIC. And so my job as the localization lead at EPIC is really whatever I want to do that helps EPIC translate better. It's a very fun position, and it's kind of my dream job. And so I improve tools and processes for both developers and our localization team in order to make sure that we can translate better and that our software works better internationally. I also work with our translators to make sure they have access to the training and education they need and the support that they need to translate their best quality text. And then I do also work with our customers to hear their feedback about the languages that we provide and respond to any issues that come up. However, my position did not exist when I started at EPIC. And so I was going to give you guys a little bit of background about how I got here into this job that I find so personally satisfying. I have degrees in Scandinavian studies with a specialty in Danish, and then also German and linguistics. My parents thought I was crazy because that was not a very marketable skill set. I did try teaching foreign language. It wasn't really for me, and I wasn't very interested in translating directly either. So I needed a job, and my brother-in-law worked at EPIC, and he said, "Hey, we're looking at signing the country of Denmark to be a customer. You should apply because you speak Danish." And I was like, "Okay." And I applied for technical support, thinking maybe I could support the Danish customer and use my Danish skills that way. But I don't have a technical degree, so I wasn't qualified for that position. And EPIC offered me quality assurance, which is software testing. And I did that for several years, about 4. During that time, I really brought forth my linguistic knowledge into the work that I did. I worked with our development teams to improve the context that they provide to our translators so their translations can be accurate. I also got involved with our German translation team almost immediately and pushed forward the tools and processes we used for that translation for our patient-facing tools. I read through regulations in Danish and advised our developers on how to proceed with meeting the needs of healthcare in Denmark, which is very different than here in the US. I was on calls with our Danish customer, and I was the interpreter, as it were, for when they would speak amongst themselves and come back to us with an answer. I could provide our developers the context about what they were talking about in Danish. I also presented across various teams at EPIC on best practices for localization, for internationalization, making sure that our software is not developed to US of a specific lens, and other translation-related topics. As such, within a year, I was one of the first people at EPIC to get the title of localization. We started actually adding that as a role in about 2015, and I was in that first group. For a couple of years after that, I took a break from the translation things and focused on management in the software tester role. And I worked a lot on managing people, project planning, quality management, and gained a lot of really useful skills there. And I also continue to push on the development team to better support language and translation for our patients, leading a multi-thousand-hour project to expand the support that we had in our patient-facing tools for a more complete translated experience. Eventually, about 2 years ago, I moved over to full-time localization, working with our Finnish and our Norwegian teams on and off, as well as Dutch and German. And after an unexpected long outage due to some pregnancy complications, when I came back looking for the home, I worked with my manager to say that where my skill set really works best for EPIC is just moving things forward on the translation front and helping the other translators, the other localization managers, and our development team improve language support at the company. And so now I have a very free schedule to work on the projects that I find most impactful and most interesting. So kind of the moral of my story here is that there's a lot of undocumented need for people who have linguistic knowledge and an international perspective in the companies here in the US. Many companies are looking to expand internationally or who serve bilingual populations here in the US. And they don't always start out with a position that is specifically about translation or localization, even if they need one. And so you can look at jobs in industries that may not come with that title and still use your degree and your knowledge to create a new opportunity for yourself. There is also a lot of valuable experience in these other fields that you can use. My time in quality assurance has made me uniquely qualified to help EPIC in this way, not as a translator, but as somebody who can combine my translation knowledge with my knowledge of EPIC software. And had I come in just as a translator, I wouldn't have that same perspective. And I really want to challenge you all to build your own career. Like I have, your dream job is out there, but it might not exist today, and you can make it. And there's a lot of open opportunity for you to use your knowledge and your passions to create a job that works best for you. And that is my abbreviated, trying to keep us on track, 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Janelle. We really appreciate you sharing your story, and I think what advice you have for everyone is really great, and I hope that you will be able to stay for the Q&A section, because I know there will be a lot of people who will have questions about your experiences, and I appreciate that. And again, I apologize to everyone that we are behind schedule, but we are moving now on to panel session 3 for professional development opportunities for speakers of less commonly taught languages, and it is my privilege to introduce Kavaria Advani, who is the program manager of the Language Flagship National Security Education Program, and Brian Cook, who is the program officer of Project Go and Language Training Center's Institute of International Education.
Hi, hello all. I'm very pleased to be here and to speak to all of you. I'm going to start out a little bit about telling you a little bit about my background and how I got to where I am. As Dr. Luch stated, I am a program manager at the Defense Language and National Security Education Office, and I work specifically on the flagship program. My main duties are overseeing the overseas flagship program, as well as the Flagship Languages Initiative and a handful of our domestic flagship programs. So to tell you a little bit of my background, I'm going to do it pretty quickly and then get into the program and do that pretty quickly too, because we do have time limitations. So basically, I always had an interest in working in an international scale. But for a long time, I didn't know what that would be. I just knew I wanted to work in the international sector doing something. So in undergraduate, I basically got my BA in political science and I minored in Russian language. While I was an undergraduate, I spent a year in St. Petersburg, Russia, studying Russian. And then I went on and I basically backpacked for about 8 months around Asia, and then did an internship for UNDP in India for about 5 months, and then came back and was assuming I'd start graduate school and applied to graduate schools. In graduate school, I studied political science again and focused on comparative politics, but this time I was more focused on the Middle East, so I started studying Arabic, and I studied Arabic through graduate school. And in 2007, I received a Boren Fellowship to study Arabic in Yemen and Syria.
I went to Yemen. I was supposed to be there for a full calendar year. So about after 8 months, there was basically the U.S. embassy got bombed, and the U.S. government asked for all non-essential Americans to leave Yemen. So of course, I had to leave. But I was able to go to Syria, which was great, and the Boren Awards allowed it to finish up my full tenure. So I actually spent a year in the Middle East. Syria was unanticipated at the time. I just really felt like my life was out of control, and there was nowhere to go. Not there was nowhere to go, but just really frazzled and unhinged about it all. But when I moved to Syria, it was one of the best opportunities I had, because Syria was amazing back then. I not only got to live and experience Damascus and travel around Syria, but I also had a very different experience in the Arab world. As some of you know who have focused on the Middle East, the different countries are so different with different cultural cues, different languages as far as dialects goes. So that was a really great experience for me. After that, since I had a Boren Award and I was like dead set on fulfilling my service, that was like the number one priority for me. I was willing to do whatever. I was willing to do whatever I could to complete my service. I applied to lots of jobs, and I got an offer from the National Security Education Program, which is now turned into the Defense Language and National Security Education Office, to work on the flagship program. So I took it. I initially started out as a contractor, and I was able to be insourced into a federal position. I've been with Flagship for, I think, 10 years. I started out really junior, basically, assisting the Flagship director at the time, and I've been able to work my way up to the position I have today. So that's kind of my story in a nutshell. I'm here to talk to you about the Language Flagship Program, as well as the Flagship Languages Initiatives Program, which is a great way to gain professional development skills if you're interested in really basically be able to have professional proficiency in a language, being able to live overseas, and kind of get those skills necessary to work in the international job market, whether it's for the government or the private sector. So basically, the Language Flagship is a partnership between the National Security Education Program, the Institute of International Education, and U.S. Institutes of Higher Education. The goal of the program is to graduate students at an ILR level 3, which for those of you who are not aware of the ILR scale, it's about an ACTFL superior, or like a pretty strong language ability. I mean, having a 3 or a ACTFL superior basically means that you can work and function in a work environment in that foreign language completely. The languages we focus on are Arabic, Chinese, Korean, Persian, Portuguese, Turkish, and Russian. Currently, we have 31 programs across the U.S. and one which is located at UW-Madison, which is the Russian program. So what makes the program so special? So apart from providing really great language curriculum that pushes you from a level 0 to a level 2 while you are at the domestic program, Flagship program provides weekly group and individual tutoring, integrated content-based instruction and courses across disciplines, immersive learning environments, cultural functions and events, and a community of language learners who are interested in learning another culture. That allows you to, basically, it provides this community where you can really make friends with people who have, similar interests that you do. So that's really special. So the way the Flagship program is kind of broken out is that students spend 4 years at an undergraduate institution, depending on their language level. You could spend 2 or 3 years if you come in at a higher proficiency level, getting to an ILR level 2, which is an advanced level. Once you get to an IL level 2, you attend a Flagship overseas program, which takes you from an ILR level 2 to an ILR level 3. Next slide, please. So the Flagship Overseas Capstone program is basically is an academic year up to a calendar year at one of our programs. In the interest of time, I'm not going to go over all of them, but if you see on the slide, you can see what countries and institutions we work with. And during that year, you get so many great opportunities. Not only are you living abroad and getting that experience, you're also participating in really rigorous classes that push you from the advanced level to the superior level. You have specialized tutors and or language partners. You have direct enrollment at overseas universities, which allows you to take classes at the partner university in that language with fellow students from that country in whatever domain you're interested or major that you're basically going for. We also do professional internships where you're able to intern at
a nonprofit or a business, and basically, you're interning there, you're using your language, you're learning about the work field in the workplace in your field. It's a really great opportunity. There's lots of coastal excursions that involve travel around the country, and obviously these are living learning environments. Most of the programs have homestays or roommates, so where you're really basically learning your language and learning culture in real time, in real space, in all ways, whether it's in the classroom, on the university campus, in your home life. So these are really, really great opportunities. Next slide, please. So we're talking about career outlook, and this is kind of the focus of this entire day. So when we're looking at career outlook, what does Flagship give you skills-wise? What makes Flagship so unique, and what it really gives you is language skills that are unparalleled. You'll be coming out with some of the strongest language skills out of anyone in the market, and you'll be very competitive for a number of jobs. You will also have the experience of living and working abroad. You develop cultural acumen, and you will just have that experience where you can really market yourself. A lot of our graduates work in government, business, industry, and commerce, international development, law, media, services, teaching, travel, and tourism. Next slide. Next. So I'm going to also talk about the Flagship Languages Initiative, which is under the Flagship program, but is a different program model. For many of you who are already at University of Wisconsin and maybe are not interested in Russian and want to take another language, the Flagship Languages Initiative may be more interesting for you. So basically with the Language Flagship, to participate in the program, you have to be enrolled in a Flagship university. So that is a university which offers a Flagship program. If you're not enrolled in one of those universities, you cannot participate in the program. The Flagship Languages Initiative is very different because you can come from all over the country and participate. You don't have to be enrolled in a Flagship university, and these are really great programs. So the Flagship Languages Initiative model is slightly different from the Flagship program. It's basically over a summer and a semester. So during your first summer, you have a really, really intensive program at a domestic university, which is teaching one of these languages. Currently, the University of Wisconsin and University of Florida. During this time, you spend 8 weeks, really intensive study, and you're really getting that there's lots of different cultural activities and different ways. These programs are very intense, but they really reach the goals. One thing that's different about the Language Flagship Initiative, or the Flagship Languages Initiative, that's different from Flagship as well, is that all students must be Bourne Scholars and Fellows. I'm sure many of you have heard about the Bourne program this morning from some of my colleagues, so I will not go into detail, but to be qualified for the Flagship Languages Initiatives, you have to also go through the Bourne process and be selected. And as a Bourne Scholar or Fellow, you must complete a year of service in the federal government. So for those of you who are really, really interested in working for the federal government, this is a really great way to get into it, because with all Bourne Scholars and Fellowships, you will be able to, you get special hiring privileges that makes it easier to get into these programs. The languages we offer for the Flagship Languages Initiatives include African languages, Akan, Twi, French, Swahili, and Zulu, Indonesian, South Asian languages, Hindi and Urdu, and Turkish. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Brian Cook, to talk about Project Go.
Thank you, Barry. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Brian Cook. I'm a program officer for Project Global Officer, or Project Go, and then also the Language Training Center program at the Institute of International Education, or IIE. We work in partnership with and on behalf of the Defense Language and National Security Education Office, which is, of course, where Kaveri works. I'll give you a brief bit of background for me. I was a Russian language minor in college. I was also an Army ROTC cadet. I served as a field artillery officer on active duty to include a combat deployment to Iraq in 2007-2008. And I've been working in Washington, D.C. in the defense and nonprofit communities for about the last decade. To talk about Project Go, I know I'm sure we have some ROTC students on the call, in addition, as well as some Project Go students, and then of course some students who might be thinking about joining ROTC down the line. It's not my role here right now to be recruiting for ROTC, but to give you an idea of the opportunities that exist in Project Go for students, this is a scholarship program for critical and less commonly taught languages, provides fully paid scholarships, mainly for summer overseas programs, but also some domestic programs. Again, run by IIE on behalf of the Defense Language and National Security Education Office, and it's open to ROTC cadets and midshipmen nationwide. So even though we have 22 Project Go institutional partners, if you're an ROTC student anywhere in the nation, you can apply to Project Go for a fully funded language scholarship for summer study, particularly abroad, but also with some domestic study opportunities. Next slide. To talk briefly about the career outlook for Project Go alumni, obviously, if you're an ROTC student, your goal is to commission in your service. So you're going to commission as an ensign or second lieutenant, the Army, Air Force, Navy, or Marine Corps, and go through that initial training pipeline to be that initial military specialty, whether you're going to be an infantry officer, a pilot, an intelligence officer, a logistician, et cetera. And then what I want to talk about very briefly are the pipelines that exist for you to utilize your language experience and your cultural expertise and your regional knowledge down the line. Probably the most famous career path here is the Foreign Area Officer, or FAO career path. A FAO is a regional expert assigned to either the Geographic Combatant Commands, the Functional Combatant Commands, or embassies, U.S. embassies overseas. And FAOs act as strategic advisors to senior commanders and to ambassadors in those embassies. You could also use your language skills in an operational assignment if you're deployed in any of the combatant command areas of responsibility, or AORs, whether that's a combat mission or a advise and assist mission, or something like if you're in the National Guard and you are on a deployment with the State Partnership Program, finding ways to use your languages in an operational environment. As I said briefly, I studied Russian in college, deployed to Iraq, and didn't have the opportunity to use my Russian skills, but because I was a language learner, I was in a position to think about how to learn Arabic very quickly and then apply that in an operational setting. Military intelligence is a very common career path for those with language skills. The MI community gets a little sensitive talking about specific career paths there. Please know that they do exist. You can work in the special operations community. Probably the most famous example is Army Special Forces, where each of the Army Special Forces groups are aligned with a particular region. And then to be an operational member of a team, you have to maintain proficiency in a language in your assigned area of responsibility. But the other services do have their own special operations forces that come with their own language requirements and language billets. Another pipeline to point out is the Air Force LEAP program, or Language Enabled Airman program. This is a career-long program that codes you as a linguist or as a language specialist, so the Air Force knows when to offer you opportunities or pull you out of assignments to put you into language billets, or to give you an opportunity to work in a language billet. So you could be a pilot, but if you have expertise in a less commonly taught language, they may know to code you for a follow-on assignment that utilizes that language. And then what Kaveri was talking about earlier, a lot of the same post-service opportunities apply to Project Go alumni in terms of getting out of the service or working in the Guard or Reserves and then working in business or in government and in nonprofits. Next slide. And so I just briefly wanted to show you all this. I can't read this from where I'm sitting and looking at my screen. I'm sure you can't either. Please know, though, that we do have some great testimonials of folks who have gone through Project Go, have gone on to commission, and used their language skills in their careers and operational settings. The one that I wanted to point out is on the bottom right of your screen, and that is now Captain Jennifer Ward, then Lieutenant, who talked about she learned Swahili but was deployed to Iraq, but was able to use the ability to learn a language and to interact in different cultures. She was able to take that experience and apply it when she was on an operational deployment. So that's it. That's my time. Thank you, everybody. rotcprojectgo.org if you want any more information.
Thank you so much, Brian. I really appreciate your time. And again, my apologies to everyone that we're running a little behind schedule, but we'll have an opportunity for more discussion in the Q&A, and as a reminder, you'll be able to find the contact information and the materials that we're using today in the presentation on our website, so that you'll be able to get in contact with our speakers as well. And so now I will introduce Katie Jost, who is the Program Director of the Council of American Overseas Research Centers.
Hi, thank you. So my name's Katie, and I work at the Council of American Overseas Research Centers, or CAORC for short. And I've included a couple of photos here so that you can visualize what some of these centers look like. But CAORC is based in Washington, D.C., but we have a network of 25 overseas research centers around the world. They're located in Asia, in the MENA region, West Africa, Europe, Latin America, so very diverse spread in terms of the geographical area. And all of our centers are their own independent nonprofit institutions, and they also all have a U.S. base, oftentimes in universities, including, coincidentally, the University of Wisconsin-Madison. So I wanted to talk to you all about some of the resources and opportunities that we have available, both at CAORC and the network more generally. And one thing I wanted to mention is that a lot of our centers do work with the less commonly taught languages, whether it's to provide language classes, or it's even things like having digital archives where you can find an ebook in that language. All sorts of different things. We have one center that's based in Mexico that's done a lot of work with endangered and indigenous languages, and they've even created a new study abroad program where you can go to Brazil and meet people that are living in very kind of isolated communities and learn about the language and preservation efforts. So there's really a lot of different opportunities. We also occasionally have jobs that pop up from time to time, whether it's an internship, or there's even a job right now at our center in Mongolia for the position of executive director that's looking for someone with Mongolian language skills. And I think there was a job a few days ago where one of our centers was looking for an accountant with Arabic language skills. So I do see it happen from time to time that there are these positions, and more often than not, they're looking for people that have experience or skills in less commonly taught languages. So I think this is a great network for you all to be familiar with. And you can see on our website at caorc.org all the places that we work in. And one specific opportunity I wanted to tell you about is our fellowship programs. And so for anyone who's either finishing up a PhD or is considering, or already has one actually, this is going to be directly relevant. And if not, this might be something to think about for the future. And so we have two main fellowship programs. One is our multi-country research fellowship that's been around for, I think, 28 years now. And it's essentially a travel grant that allows you to go to multiple countries, one of which has to have one of our overseas research centers. And it allows you to conduct field work. And this program is actually sponsored by the Department of State, ECA. And we have another program, the NEH Senior Research Fellowship, which tends to be for more established academics and for people who already have a PhD. And this allows you to go abroad to a country with one of our centers for between 4 to 6 months and really become immersed in the country, carry out research, become involved with one of our centers. And one thing I can tell you is that in terms of having sat in on many peer review committees, language skills are something that the committee definitely looks at. And so if you happen to know a less commonly taught language, I think that's a huge advantage for different types of fellowships and grants. Because if someone, for instance, wants to go to Senegal, you might see that they speak English and possibly also French, but if someone happens to know Wolof, that's definitely a competitive edge because it means that you can speak to people and interact in ways that someone who does not have those language skills could probably not do. So I think for those of you who have these language skills, and particularly if you're thinking of a more academic career, this is, I think, a great opportunity for all of you. And all of our overseas research centers, they also have grants and fellowship programs. For instance, our newest member center is in Myanmar, and they have a new fellowship program where master's level students are eligible. So for anyone who's learning Burmese, that could be a great opportunity to look into. Some of our centers also have opportunities for undergraduate students as well. I know our Albright Institute in Jerusalem, and there's also a center in Greece. They have programs for undergraduate students. So there's really a lot that's on offer in terms of the whole network. So I would really encourage you to look at our website, and certainly feel free to get in touch with me, and I can try and answer questions or point you to the right person. And I'm going to keep it really short since I know that we're running a little short on time. So thank you very much. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Katie. And we'll have opportunity to do so after our panels. So next I will transition to Mark Lillet, who is the Assistant Director for Awards at the Institute for Regional and International Studies at UW-Madison.
Hi there. I'm going to follow along on Katie's example, hopefully, and keep this really short. Among the many duties I have as Assistant Director for Awards here on campus with IRIS is as a FLAS coordinator and working with both IRIS's FLAS awards, IRIS-specific FLAS awards, and working with all of the centers in processing and pushing out and publicizing the FLAS awards across campus. Cheryl Gibbs did a great job of outlining sort of the bare bones of the FLAS program, and so she did the bulk of my work for me, which I really, really appreciate. But there is some nuance to it, which I'd like to touch on briefly, and I know that probably many of you are also not UW students and or participating in UW programs on perhaps UW FLAS awards, but are going back to home campuses after the summer comes around. So I want to touch on a couple things that might be helpful and useful to you there. I also want to touch on some of the other awards that I work on and situate FLAS in the context of them, just because I think it's really important to, when you're applying for a FLAS or for any of these opportunities, to think of them essentially as in sequence. Awards tend to build on awards. And so once you get that first one, once you start that skill building, in no small part being funded by one of these awards, you're really opening the door not only to additional opportunities in the private sector and the government sector, but also for pursuing some of these additional award opportunities, which will, again, help you build additional skill sets, additional expertise, additional proficiency in foreign languages, whatever foreign language you're looking to pursue. As Cheryl pointed out, foreign language and area studies program awards are offered to support students who are pursuing expertise, acquisition, and advanced proficiency in less commonly taught languages. We've got 8 FLAS awarding centers here on campus, covering a whole range of different languages, obviously. The awards are also given out in 2 separate terms, both the academic year and over the summer. And the awarding of those functions a little bit differently, and it can be really important for both UW students and non-UW students to keep in mind. During the summer, the FLASs are meant to support your language acquisition only, exclusively. And so that's a summer FLAS award is your opportunity to, if you are at, say, at an institution that doesn't have a FLAS awarding center, is to look for FLAS funding and support from an institution, such as the UW-Madison, that does have both FLASs and the programming open and available to support your language acquisition. And so a number of our FLAS awards are given to non-UW students who are attending UW summer programs. And so that's one way to keep in mind that you can, if you're at a non-FLAS institution, that you can advance your proficiency and build your skill set out using what is an incredible resource and tool in the FLAS funding. For academic year, it's UW based and the FLAS awarding centers wherever you happen to be. You definitely want to be talking to your FLAS coordinators on your campus and in the centers that are award FLASs. Each center will have different priorities. We'll be looking to perhaps prioritize different funding, sort of different fields, and what have you. So starting that conversation very early with your FLAS coordinator, or if you're at the UW-Madison, shooting me an email real quickly can be really useful in terms of mapping out the work that you're doing. During the academic year, you are receiving a FLAS to support not only your language acquisition, so you're taking a language course each semester, but also a related area or international studies course. So you're also working on your competency in your field and in your area studies expertise. And so it's unlike the summer where you're really focused on language acquisition. In the academic year, you're sort of broadening out and you're developing your core set of skills related to the language and sort of academic training more broadly. Basic timeline here on our campus, we like to open up the application period in November, and with a deadline typically in February for the coming summer and the following academic year awards. So you're applying fairly far out there. So you want to be thinking about things now. And actually, we are in the process, obviously, of working on getting our academic year awards set up that we've already been awarded. So we're always sort of trying to look at least a couple months in advance. When you're putting in your application, you're basically oftentimes looking close to a year in advance. That sort of forethought is really important when you're pursuing a FLAS or pursuing any other sort of award where you're building on your, your competencies that you're developing. And, again, as Cheryl pointed out, when in terms of developing expertise and developing the expertise that government is looking for and that private sector is looking for, it takes time. And one of the great benefits of the FLAS Award, of a Fulbright, of Boren, of Critical Language Scholarship, of the Fulbright-Hays Doctoral Dissertation Research Abroad, I'm trying to tick off all the various things that I actually have a finger in working and play on, the Loose Scholars Program. All of these various programs and all of these awards essentially buy you a little bit of time to develop your expertise, which you can then take into your next steps. And if you're planning ahead and if you're thinking ahead of how does this fit into my broader goals, my broader work plan, my academic career, my post-graduation career, and all of these next steps, you're going to be that much more competitive a candidate. For each and every award. You're going to be demonstrating a clear sense of purpose. You're going to be contextualizing your work and your desire to acquire the language and the skills within a broader context, which is going to make you more attractive, more competitive, again, whether it's in the private sector, government sector, or in academia when you're running after some of these awards. FLAS can be a really, really handy kind of early career award to open up the doors to the initial awards. As Cheryl Gibbs pointed out, for undergraduates, we can't fund beginning level language studies with a FLAS. There are some opportunities where we can do so for graduate students, but for undergraduates, we can't. But if you've taken that first year of language and you're looking to pursue intermediate and advanced study, you can get a FLAS with that. That additional competency and preparation will open doors to the next steps. It will allow you to pursue and be more competitive for a critical language scholarship, for a Boren Award, to further advance in the field and in country, once we finally get to start traveling to country again, additional set of expertise to kind of build on. And having a good, solid, clear career path moving forward will make you that much, like I said, that much more competitive. There are some limitations in FLAS awards in terms of the language study. As I mentioned, the language levels studied, what's available on campus, what's available through various programs off campus, when we can fund that. And so, again, you want to get in, you want to be talking to FLAS coordinators on campus. You can reach out to me. Real quickly, in addition, as is named, sort of ticking down the various things I work on, And we've got someone from IIE coming in to talk about Fulbright, which is next, but I'm also the Fulbright program advisor on campus. And so, you know, having a FLAS in pocket where you've also got 3 years of Arabic, if you apply for that Fulbright for post-graduation, your FLAS communicates something very clear to the various review committees, that you're serious, that organizations, schools, and have looked at you and seen you as someone worth funding and worth stepping through the system. And so you really want to take these initial steps every step of the way. 2 real quick additional things. Apply, 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 and keep on applying. If you're interested in an award, apply for it. If you're eligible for the award, apply for it. If there's preferences or priorities that you don't quite match up, but you meet the eligibility requirements, run after that award. Talk to everybody you can about it. Not everybody gets the awards on the first go around, but if you keep on working at it and you keep on applying for it and you keep on skill building in the meantime, you're going to open up that door. You're going to be able to make these next steps. You want to talk to everybody possible. To anyone who's got their hand in running any of these programs, get in there, have a conversation, ask for a meeting to find out as much as you can about the opportunities that are available, about the limitations. You want to do your homework, but oftentimes some of these requirements are such that they can get a little bit confusing. So rather than getting confused and potentially taking yourself out of the running, talk to people, make sure you understand what's going on, and chase after those awards that make sense for you, make sense in terms of the next steps for your plans, and it is amazing what could potentially be unlocked for you. I think my information is all on the bio page, so I encourage you to take a look at the links that we've got there to reach out to me if you've got questions. I do programs for undergraduates who are enrolled at the UW-Madison, through graduate students to alumni, and that's the one last thing to keep in mind. Oftentimes schools have opportunities for alumni. You're not necessarily applying through the school, but the school offers you support and resources, and you are essentially going through the application through the school. For us, it's such things as the Loose Scholars Program. We offer support for Schwartzman Scholars, things along those lines. So once you graduate, don't forget about the resources on campus to help you pursue any of these opportunities that come up and are important to you. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you for those really great points. And as for the other presenters as well, remember that we will have their information up on the website so that post-event you'll be able to connect with them and see the resources that they are sharing. Now it is my privilege to introduce Julie Taylor, who is the Director of Academic Relations for Fulbright Institute at International Education, at the Institute of International Education. Sorry about that, Julie.
I do that all the time. Thank you so much for inviting me to speak with you today. Like the other presenters, I'll try to get through as quickly as possible and hopefully provide you just some interesting information up front, but also links to more information inside the portal. I want to start off by saying everything that Mark said. So what he says, much of it applies to what I'm going to be telling you in my presentation. They asked me to speak a little bit about IIE before I launch into Fulbright. So I work for the Institute of International Education. We're a leader in implementing international exchange programs, which is why you've heard many of my colleagues before me. And we've been around for 100 years. So you're probably familiar with many of our programs. For instance, the Fulbright program, the Gilman program, Boren, Humphrey, there's many others. So we do a lot of programs for the US government, for foreign governments. We implement for foundation programs, corporations, and one thing that people often don't realize about IIE is that we're also a thought leader in international education exchange. And we conduct a lot of applied research and policy analysis on international student mobility. So you may have seen the Open Doors report, and that's something that is published by IIE. And then there's many other reports, including some really great snapshot reports about the impact of COVID-19 on international exchange that I highly recommend. So I'll be putting up information about IIE in the portal. We are hiring. We have 18 offices, so we have 6 in the United States and then many abroad in Kiev, Moscow, Beijing, even though we just found out that the Fulbright program has been suspended for China and Hong Kong. We still have offices in both places, Mexico City, so we have opportunities for people to be employed all over the world. So I definitely recommend that you check out our website because we're constantly posting opportunities there. So let me get to the Fulbright program. The Fulbright program is a State Department-led program. It's going to be having its 75th anniversary next year. We're very excited. And it's an international exchange program that sends U.S. students, scholars, and professionals abroad and brings foreign students, scholars, and professionals to the United States for study, teaching, and conducting research or projects. So what does that mean for people at different levels? Well, for those of you who are students, we have several different opportunities in the U.S. student program. We have Open Study Research Awards, which are sort of the traditional Fulbright Awards. You can either go for a graduate study abroad, or you can conduct a research project in another country. And for these, you can even win you can even apply for a critical language enhancement grant on many of them, which would then give you additional time to study and perfect your language skills before taking the larger grant. We also have the English teaching assistantships, in which you go and you teach English in many different types of capacities. So with Fulbright, we always say it depends, because we have so many different awards that we can't even describe them all. There's hundreds of awards. So you really need to go in and look at the details of each one of your awards, and also go to resources like your Fulbright program advisor on your campus, many campuses have them, in order to find out more about the program. So why apply for Fulbright? I think that for students, it makes you extremely competitive on the job market if you've received a Fulbright. Now, you tend to apply for a Fulbright at a time in which your fellow students are going to be applying for other jobs. It's going to be in your senior year, and you will have started the process actually in your junior year, because the deadline for the student program is October 13th. So you'd be applying in your senior year through your university, as Mark said. In most cases, you can apply directly, but if you have an SPA, a Fulbright Program Advisor, on your campus or the campus that you recently graduated from, you definitely want to apply through them. And it makes you very competitive because employers can see that you've been vetted, and there have been panels of reviewers who have found you to be very distinguished and committed. You've gone through a very long process in order to do this application, and that you're skilled, because usually you've had to describe a research project that you undertook. You've gone and you've learned how to teach in these other countries. You've acquired greater language skills, intercultural communication skills. These are all things that employers are looking for. Another reason is it's a fabulous experience. That's probably the main reason. It is transformative. we know that because we do surveys and everyone says that it is transformative. That is the word that we see most on all of those surveys. And you can also use it, like I said, to further your language skills. And I think that's probably very important for this audience. Now, another group that often gets overlooked in the Fulbright program is graduate students. So if you're a graduate student, you are, within your master's PhD program, you still apply through the student program. So if you're doing your dissertation research and you want to go abroad, you can apply for a Fulbright Hays. That's run through the Department of Education. And you can also apply for a Fulbright Student Award in order to go abroad and do your research. And so you too would then apply through an SPA. You would not apply directly. But if you're in your last year, if you are coming up on your last year of graduate school and you're a PhD student and you're looking to have an academic career, then you want to apply for postdocs through the Scholar Program. And we have several postdocs, and I really want to encourage people to apply because these tend to be some of our most undersubscribed awards. And especially right now with a really tight job market, they're just incredible opportunities for people. We have 2-year postdocs in Israel and in a couple of other countries. So I definitely recommend that you give those a look. But again, that's only for if you're a graduate student in your last year, you're going to be graduating and going out in the job market. Along with your job applications, make sure to throw in a postdoc application for the Fulbright program. And then for scholars, I think that like Mark was saying, the Fulbright is it's a mark of distinction for you, and it leads to other opportunities. And it's not just that it shows that, others have approved of your research, that they find it distinguished, but you will make connections while you are on the Fulbright that will end up leading to other opportunities. So they often find that research is improved and you receive more citations if you have a mixed group of people on an article or a publication. And so this type of diversity ends up having payoffs for you professionally if you start doing research and collaborating with others who you meet abroad. But like the student program, it's also just very fulfilling and it has a transformative effect. People who come to the Fulbright program as scholar applicants, and what they really want is just to extend their sabbatical, write their book, be left alone. Even they end up having a transformative experience and often become reviewers for Fulbright afterwards, reviewers on on their campuses, or reviewers on national committees for Fulbright, or they try and apply for other ways that their institution can apply for federal dollars through Fulbright programs in order to bring foreign scholars to their campus. They just become much more committed. Many of them end up establishing international exchange programs between their universities and the university that they were hosted by. So it ends up becoming a wonderful experience for them. So who are the folks who can apply for the Scholar Award? I know that right now, many people are facing great uncertainty. And if you're someone who's facing job insecurity, you think you might be out of a job, you can still apply for a Fulbright Scholar Award. It does not require that you have an institutional affiliation for most of our awards, just that you have the credentials, required credentials. So if you're early career, mid-career, distinguished scholar emeritus, you qualify for applying for a Fulbright Award. And the deadline for that is September 15th. So I recommend that, that you go to our websites and take a look to see what might be applicable for you. There's also contact information on those websites of folks at IIE who can direct you and answer to awards that are applicable for you and answer your questions. And also, I will be posting everything into the portal. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Julie. Yes, so our final presentation, last but not least, is from Adisu Hodes, who is the project manager in government contracts at ACTFL, and Rula Malki, who is a training and certification specialist at ACTFL, which is the American Council on the Teaching of Foreign Languages.
All right, hi everyone. I hope you can hear me well.
Yes, perfectly.
Okay, perfect, excellent. Good afternoon from Washington, D.C., and thank you so much for inviting us to be panelists in this great event. Adisu and I have been listening for the past, I don't know how many hours, and and this is great, really. We are honored to be here. We'll keep it brief. It's Friday night, and you know, we will just keep it brief and tell you what ACTFL has to offer. Just a quick brief look at my background. My name is Rula Malki, and thank you for the introduction. I'm the training and certification specialist with ACTFL. I'm basically, I was born and raised in Jordan in the Middle East, and then I moved to Geneva, Switzerland with my previous job, and then I moved to the United States in 2013. I just said that because I would like to tell you the importance of languages. I speak 3 languages, Arabic, English, and French, and someone once asked me, like, I mean, what's the importance of speaking 3 languages? Like, you know, why don't you just speak English? I'm like, well, I can speak those 3 languages. When I speak those, I can go to 95 countries in the world and speak these languages without the need for a translator. So this is very important. And really, if you know a second or a third language, you should be proud of yourself. So basically what ACTFL offers in terms of professional development, we offer a variety of certification and training, mainly the OPI, the Oral Proficiency Interview, where we basically work on advancing your proficiency and build your interview skill set. This applies to basically all teachers and educators. We know how important you are, especially these days. What we offer these workshops which you can attend. These are ACTFL assessment workshops that cover OPI, WPT, which is the writing proficiency test. We also offer per invitation the oral proficiency interview, but by computer, and the APPLE, which is the actual assessment of proficiency toward performance toward proficiency. I never get it right. So we offer these types of certifications, and once you get certified, you get recognized locally and internationally, and you become a language professional. So we do not teach languages, but we basically train people on how to become language professionals. You conduct tests in your own organization, and you get the chance to also conduct tests with our testing office, language testing international. The program is over a year long, and you can finish it in less than that, maybe 8 or 9 months. But it's a very rigorous program, as it includes 4 major phases of training on how to become a certified tester. A lot of information is available on our website, actfl.org. That's actfl.org. And once you become, like I said, a certified tester, you can you conduct these interviews in your own organization or wherever else you go. I'm happy to answer questions. I wanted to keep it brief, and I will turn it over right now to my colleague, Adisu.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for having us. My name is Adisu Hodes. I'm a project manager at ACTFL. I've been at ACTFL for over a year now. I work with government contracts, and so I mainly do a lot of recruiting of people who speak a different language to train and certify to become ILR OPI tester. So ILR OPI tester, OPI is oral proficiency interview test. And the ILR is a nationally recognized method of assessing spoken language proficiencies. So what we do, we recruit people, we have them go through an intensive training process. We then hire them as consultants to test for us on a needed basis. All the information is available on our website. You could also, given it's 5:30, I don't want to talk too much, but you could go on our website and learn how you could engage with Axpool. You could also shoot us an email. We're very responsive. We'll be happy to get back to you on a timely manner. And the website for this particular assignment, this particular portion is called axpool.org/ILROPI. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much, Rula and Adisu, and thank you everyone for your wonderful presentations and sharing information about your organizations and about your own experiences. We will transition into our Q&A session. And again, we apologize that we were running a little behind schedule. For those who can stay, we'll keep the Q&A session going till 5 p.m. If you need to leave, that's fine. And what we're going to do too is we got a number of questions in the chat. And so we'll go through some questions now, but then we'll also follow up with our panelists and our presenters for any of the questions that we weren't able to answer in this session. And then we will post them as kind of a fact page on our website. So if your question does not get answered in this Q&A panel, please don't worry. We will check in with our presenters and we will get information for you and get that posted on the website. So again, thank you everyone for being here. So one of the first questions we'll start out with Ron and Abigail. This is for you. Is there an age restriction to apply to the Consular Fellow Program or Foreign Service?
I'm right here, so I'll go ahead and take that. Can you hear me okay, Felicia?
Perfect.
Great. So you need to really for there is an age requirement. You need to be at least 20 to take the test to apply and 21 to start. And you have to be no older than 59 to take the test and start no later than 60. So basically between the ages of 20 and 59 to apply for either of those programs, for either as a consular fellow or as a foreign service officer. And that's true about many of our positions in the foreign service as well.
Actually, I will add really quickly that for the Consular Fellows Program, there's no upper age limit at this time. So you can actually apply and serve older than the age limit for career foreign service officers. So, and we do get many applicants and have successful Consular Fellows who are older than that limit.
Thanks for that, Abby, and I'm sorry about that. Yes, you're right. I've just confused the two programs. For foreign service officers, that what I described as the age limit. Not for Consular Fellows. I should have let you speak first.
No problem. No problem.
Thank you both. Laura, do you want to initiate our next question?
Sure. This question looks like it's for panel 2, so probably for Kaveri and maybe for Hillary. So if I have already advanced language skills and want to practice translating, so no, I'm sorry, it's for Anya and Annie. Practice translating, interpreting, do you have exercises you recommend? And how much experience do organizations look for before hiring you as a translator? So again, I'm sorry, it's for Anya and Annie, and it's about advanced language skills and practice translating, interpreting. Recommended exercises.
I can start with my answer, which is, it depends what kind of translation you are talking about. If you are talking about literary translation, one of the best things you can do is get a book that has been translated or get poetry that has been translated and compare, the two translations, or even sample translate your own, version of a passage and then compare it with a published translation. That's a really excellent school, for learning. And depending on what your language is, for more applied translation, there are many textbooks for Russian and German, which are my two languages. There are textbooks for a lot of you. In LCTL, though, there won't be textbooks, but there will be language neutral textbooks such as Mona Baker's. In other words, I'll type it here in the chat, Mona Baker, in other words, and that is a language neutral translation textbook. So that would be my first place to start. Thank you.
The other question was, how much experience do organizations look for before hiring you as a translator?
This might be better for Anya.
Yeah, so I would say this very much depends on who you're going to be working for. I personally worked with a lot of agency, and the standards they had for translators varied widely. So it would make sense to look them up and to see their requirements. Many of them do want you to be a native speaker in one of the languages, of course, and have a very high proficiency in the other. And they often do want you to have specific training. So either a degree in language or in translation or a sort of certification. So look around. There are many translation agencies. If you are translating in one of the less commonly taught languages, you kind of have your pick of the litter because there is such a need for you. So look around and see who jives with who you are as a person, where they work, how they work, and just inquire, reach out to them and see what their requirements are for you.
Great, thank you. And I'll pass it back to Felicia.
Wonderful. So our next question is for the opportunities, the career opportunities and professional development opportunities discussed today, which ones are eligible or are non-U.S. citizens eligible for? So it's open to our panel.
I can start. So in terms of non-U.S. citizens, our KORC NEH Senior Research Fellowship, you can, as long as you're a U.S. resident for at least 3 years at the time of application, you are eligible. Most of our programs are for U.S. citizens. Some of our overseas research centers do have some opportunities for people who are not U.S. citizens. And I can try and think of some more specific ones and email you later if that's helpful, depending on what people are interested in.
Thank you.
Sorry. Mango languages, same thing. We do have opportunities for non-U.S. citizens. Depending on what you want to do, for some jobs, we do require you to be a citizen and or a resident of the United States. For others, as I mentioned earlier, we truly work with subject matter experts from around the world. It does not matter to us where you are, as long as you have a stable internet connection to do what you need to do. Though I will add that oftentimes we do look for native speakers for some of the courses that require updates or improvements or addition of content. Of course, we need to work with native speakers, though sometimes please don't let that deter you if you're not quite there yet. There are opportunities for very advanced learners to still provide some value.
Thank you both.
Can I also suggest that there are online courses specifically for getting you either a master's degree or perhaps a dual master's degree in, for example, library science and interpreting or translation, or a graduate certificate, and that can be either language specific or a language neutral. And I can put the names of the 5 programs that I know about, including the program that I teach in. And this would count as professional development, because once you can, claim you have that certification, that will open more doors to you. So I will put the names of those online master's and graduate certificate programs in the chat.
Thank you, Annie. Is it okay then if we also post that on the website and include these other resources?
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
I think that for Fulbright, for the U.S. scholar and U.S. student programs, citizenship is required for going abroad. But you can apply if you are in your home country. for the foreign scholar or foreign student programs, you apply through your country's embassy, through the post, or through their Fulbright Commission.
Thank you, Julie. Laura, do you want to take our next question?
Sure, thank you. So this is a question for our Boren professionals here. So is it possible to use a Boren Award or Flagship Award or other scholarships post-graduation?
So I'll go ahead and take that. For the Boren Award, you do need to be matriculated during your overseas experience. So for those who are in undergraduate or currently in graduate school, you would need to maintain your matriculation. You would need to maintain that student status while you are overseas. That looks different depending on your universities, and our team at Boren is very happy to talk through what that looks like, sort of depending on your own university situation. If you are graduating with your undergraduate degree and you are applying for graduate school, that is totally fine. You can apply for a Boren Fellowship. We know that our application deadline comes before you've been officially notified. And so we'll work with you on the other side if you are a recipient just to determine that eligibility.
Thank you very much. Do you have anything to add, Kaveri? I'll take that as a no.
Oh, sorry.
Are you?
Yeah, no, I don't have anything to add.
Thank you. Felicia, do you have another question?
Yeah, so our next question is regarding government work. And the question is it more advantageous for the government sector to receive candidates with special depth in one low density language or breadth in colloquial languages in the region?
I'm sure my other colleagues have something to say about this, but I can answer it also. I think it just really depends. It depends. There's not one fit all. It depends on what kind of job you're going for. If you were to join the State Department, be a foreign service officer, they're looking for generalists, not specialists. So they really want someone who's malleable and who's able to learn languages and pivot to different regions. Other jobs may be looking for someone who's very regionally focused, who has those specific skills. So it really depends on what kind of job you want to go into, what agency you're looking at. It's not just one or the other.
Thank you, Kaveri.
Okay, so this, I think, is a question that came up during Cheryl. I see that Cheryl is here during your keynote. What would you say to people who are maybe interested in language study but concerned about the amount of time that it will take? And then what are the opportunities there to study a language, especially when you start thinking about the length of time? So if you could talk a little bit about that.
The time that it takes should not be an intimidating factor. In terms of what the Title VI programs and the Fulbright-Hays programs, they were predicated on understanding that it takes a lot of time to get trained and to reach advanced and beyond advanced level proficiency in these languages. So from the department's point of view, we don't want people rushing through the language training process. It's going to take time because by the time you get on the other end of the language learning, that's what makes you most competitive for the opportunities that the other panels described. So I emphasize the fact that you have to, when you make this commitment to learning languages, especially the least commonly taught languages, it's going to take time. And it's going to take resources at your institutions to get you through the various levels and proficiencies of a language. As far as opportunities are concerned, we at the U.S. Department of Education, we have, when we think about opportunities, they are very broad. out in the field in as far as NGOs, private sector, government service, again, as the panel has highlighted some areas. But when you come out of a FLAS training program, it can be a broad training or very specific training based on your discipline. If you're coming out, and I didn't talk about this earlier, but the FLAS Fellowship also supports professional school students. So we have students who are coming out of law school who are getting fellowships because they want to do a study of a certain society's legal systems. So language study will help them in that pursuit. We have students who are getting fellowships, and it's really difficult in terms of training on campus because it's very hard to fit a FLAS training program into your law school courses or medical school, but we are finding more and more institutions are accommodating students from the professional schools. In fact, that was one of the priorities for the program that we announced about maybe 3 cycles ago. We encourage our FLAS granting institutions to really touch students in the law school, public policy, schools of journalism, medical school, because language is really important to the work that you are doing as professionals. I also wanted to say now, and Mark touched on this, we have been focusing on the distinction that FLAS gives students. But before that, the FLAS Fellowship Program distinguishes the institution itself. And some of you are attending the WISLI program, but you're not at a FLAS granting institution. I would encourage you, when you get back to your campuses online, you can do this online as well, is to look at the strengths of your own programming at your institution. The Department of Education awards fellowships directly to the institution of higher education. We then put the responsibility on the institution to run the competitions, to identify the students that are meritorious for these fellowships. But you can do your part, because I'm sure there are a lot of you who are saying, I have friends who are at Wisconsin or at Berkeley or Michigan State or Michigan or Penn or other institutions. How can I get my institution involved in the FLAS program? What you should do is go back to your campuses, look at the programs on your campuses that have area study strengths or have courses that focus on regions like Africa, or special programming or courses that speak to area studies and languages of Latin America or the Middle East or South Asia, Southeast Asia, and start talking to faculty members there and your deans there to say, there's this wonderful program, Foreign Language and Area Studies Fellowships. I would like our institutions to be a part of that. So what you would do is start now, because 2 years from now, my office will be launching the competition for institutions to submit an application to request allocations of fellowships. And in that grant institutional application, they are speaking to certain criteria. Their criteria include how are they committed to the subject area? What courses do they offer? Area studies courses do they offer? What are the languages available at the campus? What are your faculty? What are the faculty strengths? What are your library strengths? The things that undergird an area studies program and a language program, those are the things that make a difference, that set the Wisconsins apart, the universities of Washington's apart, et cetera. But I'm sure there are many of you who are hearing me this afternoon. Your institutions have certain strengths too. So you need to go back to your institutions, have them look on the website to look at what it means to be a foreign language and area studies fellowship granting institution. And the companion piece to that is what is a national resource center. And as the name implies, it means that the institution is a resource to the nation to provide training in area studies and languages as they focus on the world areas that I mentioned: Africa, Canada, East Asia, Latin America, Middle East, Russia and Eastern Europe, South Asia, Southeast Asia, Western Europe, and then there's another category that is called international, which means that you're training students across thematic foci and thematic across various regions. So as you go back, think about helping your institution to position itself to apply for FLAS fellowships, because this program is just so important and it needs to reach more students because, again, the nation needs more people who are proficient in these languages. The world needs you, and you need the support. A graduate fellowship is $33,000. An undergraduate academic year fellowship is $15,000, and a summer fellowship is $7,500. Hopefully 2 years from now, we'll be able to increase those allocations, but that's what they are set at now. But that, those are wonderful stepping stones to the other types of language training that you can get over a course of 4 years.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have a few moments for a few other questions. And like I said, if you didn't get your question answered, please don't worry. We will touch base with our presenters and get this information on our website. You can also email us after the event if there's things you're thinking about that you didn't get to ask, and we will find out those answers for you and share that information. So the question that I have next for us is perhaps directed, Janelle, to your story that you shared about your experience at EPIC, but also for others in thinking about your professional development and career development, that we were asked, how do you go about building your own job? So just kind of some of those steps that we talked about.
So I think the most impactful thing that I did during my career at EPIC was continue to push on the areas that I had unique skills and talents in that other people at EPIC might not be able to offer. And so a lot of that was my international experience and my language background. And so I made that a core part of the work that I did, even though that wasn't my job title at the time, and got recognized as somebody who was an expert in that area. And as I demonstrated the need for more work in our localization department, then that position started to open up as something that needed someone to spend their full-time efforts on instead of just my part-time, as I had time in my schedule to work on that.
Thank you.
Can I add a thought there?
Please do.
I have found that making connections with other translators, not being afraid to, reach out to other translators, needing to invest a little money in going to conferences or places where you can network is really important, because if you develop a reputation for someone who is kind, helpful, has good ideas, is, willing to, basically help, you will get referrals from other people when they're too busy. And then if you get, eventual jobs that you're not interested in, you can pass them around. And it's really important to have this kind of cohort and network of people to talk to, even just to say, I had this one client who wanted to do this weird thing, or I had this one client who really wanted me to sign this strange, this strange contract, and I'm not sure if that's like something that's normal. It's really important to develop a strong cohort. So consider joining your local, professional organizations. Thank you.
Thank you.
So there's a question here that I believe most of our panelists could answer. So what specific languages do you see as having an increased demand in your field in the coming years? And if you could be specific and describe what demands why those demands may be increasing, that would be really helpful. Does anyone want to start?
If you haven't heard too much from me, I have a I have a comment on that. One of the things we notice in literary translation especially is there is a lack of translators of color translating works by writers of color. There's a wonderful essay by John Keane, a MacArthur Fellow, Genius Grant recipient. It's called Translating Poetry, Translating Blackness. You as speakers of, less commonly taught languages, your languages are valuable. Especially if you're a native speaker of that language, your perspective is incredibly valuable, and we need it to right the sort of one-sided approach we've had to how we render other people's voices. So join ALTA, do literary translation. We need your voice. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who has noticed any particular increase in specific language, demand for specific languages? I don't think we have Jomer anymore. He would be probably someone we could pose that to him offline and post that afterwards.
And Laura, we'll also include a link on our website for the actual report, Making Languages Our Business, and the Wisconsin Roadmap Project, which will have some really useful information for this too.
Great, thank you. So I guess this wraps it up for our Q&A. I really thank everybody for sticking with us. We did go over by a bit, but I feel like this was a great day. There was such excellent information from all of the panelists. We really appreciated your time and effort. We appreciated all of the participants who stuck with us to the very end here. As Felicia has continued to let us know, there will be more information coming in the future on our website. Please get back to it as exhibitors come in. We will add new exhibitors. We'll have a Q&A so that we can kind of wrap up what we've already talked about and then answer some additional questions that have been outstanding. So thank you again, and thank you to Felicia for making this happen, and to SC, and also to Chandler. I appreciate everybody's hard work, and thank you again to all of our panelists.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.